Picture a person running on a treadmill. The pace is demanding, sweat beads on their forehead. Their breathing is labored. Their eyes are locked on a screen, flashing with news headlines and stock market tickers, while music blasts through their headphones, shutting out the world. They are moving, exerting immense effort, yet they are not going anywhere. The digital number for distance climbs higher and higher, but their actual position in the room remains unchanged. They are trapped in a loop of strenuous stillness. Does this feel familiar? Perhaps not the treadmill itself, but the feeling it represents. The sensation of running faster and faster, just to stay in the same place. This is the quiet affliction of our modern world, a condition you might call the disease of hurry. We live in a culture that worships speed, that equates busyness with worth, and sees an empty calendar as a sign of failure. We are conditioned to optimize every moment, to multitask our way through meals, conversations, and even moments of leisure. Our phones buzz with endless notifications, each one a tiny demand for our attention, pulling us away from where we are, from who we are with. We have built a world of instantaneous connection, yet we have never felt more disconnected, more alone, adrift in a sea of digital noise. We accumulate friends and followers, yet we lack true intimacy. We consume vast amounts of information, yet we starve for genuine wisdom. And in the silent moments, when the running finally stops, we are met with a profound sense of anxiety, a quiet emptiness that we immediately try to fill with the next task, the next distraction, the next goal. We keep increasing the speed of the treadmill, hoping to outrun the feeling of going nowhere. But what if the solution isn't to run faster? What if the cure for the disease of hurry is not more speed, but less? What if the answer we are so desperately seeking is not found in doing more, but in the radical, courageous act of simply being? This is not an invitation to laziness or to apathy. It is an invitation to a different kind of strength, the strength to pause, the courage to be still, to intentionally slow down, and to finally witness the life we have been too busy to live. There is an ancient path, a timeless wisdom that has explored this art for over 2.5 millennia. It is not a religion that asks for your belief, nor a dogma that demands your obedience. Rather, it is a science of the mind, a practical and deeply compassionate toolkit for understanding the nature of our own experience. It offers a way to navigate the pressures of our world, not by changing the world, but by transforming our relationship to it. It is a path that teaches us how to find peace, not in some distant future, but right here, right now, in the midst of our chaotic lives. This is an invitation to explore that path, to learn the art of slowing down in order to finally awaken. To begin this journey, we must first name the ghost that haunts our collective consciousness. It is a force so pervasive, so deeply embedded in the fabric of our lives, that we often fail to see it for what it is. It is not an enemy that attacks from the outside, but a tyrant that rules from within. We speak of the tyranny of speed. It is the unspoken religion of our time, demanding constant worship at the altar of efficiency, progress, and relentless forward motion. Its commandments are written not on stone tablets, but in the glowing notifications on our screens, in the crowded schedules of our calendars, and in the anxious, hurried rhythm of our own heartbeats. We have been conditioned to believe that to be fast is to be successful, to be busy is to be important, and to be still is to be left behind. We treat our lives like a race without a finish line, and we wonder why we are so profoundly tired. It is crucial to understand, this is not a personal failure. You are not weak or broken for feeling this way. You are a human being living within a system that is fundamentally at odds with your own nature. To find our way out, we must first have the courage to look directly at the gilded cage we have built for ourselves, to understand the true cost of our allegiance to speed. The first and most insidious cost is the way speed has become a modern addiction, rewiring the very structure of our brains. Our minds are not designed for the constant, high-frequency barrage of information they now endure. Every notification, every like, every breaking news alert, every email acts as a microdose of a powerful chemical, dopamine. It's a rush of novelty, a promise of reward. Our brain's ancient survival mechanism, designed to alert us to new opportunities or dangers, is now being hijacked by a digital world that offers an infinite supply of novelty. We become like gamblers at a slot machine, compulsively pulling the lever, checking our phones for the next small win, the next little hit of stimulation. This creates a perpetual, low-grade neurological agitation. We feel a constant pull, a background hum of anxiety, a nagging sense that we should be looking at something else, doing something else, being somewhere else. Our attention becomes fractured, shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. We try to read a book, but the ghost of our phone in our pocket calls to us. We try to have a conversation, but part of our mind is already rehearsing the email we need to send. Think of your mind as a computer browser. In an optimal state, you might have 1 or 2 tabs open, allowing you to focus deeply. The modern mind, under the tyranny of speed, is a browser with 50 tabs open at once. Each one plays a snippet of sound, a flickering video, a stream of text. The computer's fan is whirring, the system is overheating, and while a lot is happening, very little is actually being accomplished. This state of perpetual distraction is not just inefficient, it is deeply corrosive to our sense of self. We lose the ability to be alone with our own thoughts, because the silence feels threatening, empty. We have forgotten how to be bored, and in doing so, we have closed the very door through which creativity, self-reflection, and genuine insight must enter. This constant state of mental acceleration leads directly to the second great cost, the erosion of lived experience. When we move too fast, life ceases to be a 3-dimensional reality and flattens into a 2-dimensional screen. We begin to skim the surface of our own existence, mistaking the menu for the meal. Consider the simple act of eating. For our ancestors, a meal was a communal event, a moment of sensory engagement and gratitude. Today, for many, it is merely a refueling stop. We eat at our desks, in our cars, while scrolling through our phones. The food is not tasted, it is consumed. Its textures, its aromas, its subtle flavors are lost, sacrificed for the sake of a few minutes saved. The conversation suffers a similar fate. It ceases to be a dance of mutual discovery and becomes a mere transaction of information. We listen not to understand, but to formulate our reply. We wait for a gap in the other person's speech, a space to insert our own opinion, our own story. We are present in body, but our mind is already 10 steps ahead, planning, judging, preparing. The profound gift of deep listening, the gift of offering someone the full, undivided sanctuary of your attention, has become one of the rarest commodities in our world. Even our relationship with the world itself becomes shallow. A walk in the park is no longer a walk in the park. It is an opportunity to listen to a podcast, to close a business deal on the phone, to count our steps on a fitness tracker. We stride through a world of wonders with our eyes down, our ears plugged, oblivious to the way the sunlight filters through the leaves, the intricate pattern of a spider's web, the sound of birdsong. We are present for the data of our lives, but absent for the poetry, This is the great tragedy of speed. It promises to give us more time, but it steals the quality of the time we have. It offers us a life that is wider, yet infinitely more shallow. Third, we must speak of the immense pressure born from the cult of productivity. Speed has a close cousin, and its name is optimization. We are no longer content to simply live. We must live optimally. We must optimize our workouts for maximum muscle gain, optimize our sleep with tracking apps, optimize our diets for peak performance, and even optimize our hobbies to become marketable side hustles. Life is no longer a mystery to be lived, but a problem to be solved, a project to be managed. This mindset turns us into the relentless overseers of our own lives, whip in hand, demanding ever greater output from the asset that is ourself. The result is not fulfillment, but a pervasive and exhausting form of burnout. Burnout is more than just feeling tired. It is a deep spiritual exhaustion. It is the cynicism that arises when you have given everything and still feel it is not enough. It is the feeling of profound inefficacy, the sense that all your frantic activity amounts to nothing of real substance. This pressure creates a constant, gnawing feeling of falling behind. We look at the curated lives of others on social media, the highlight reels of their careers and vacations, and we feel a pang of inadequacy. We are not doing enough, not achieving enough, not being enough. The tyranny of speed whispers that if we just ran a little faster, worked a little harder, slept a little less, we could finally catch up. But it is a lie. There is no destination to arrive at. There is only the running, the endless, self-inflicted pursuit of an ever-receding horizon. This relentless striving depletes our reserves of joy and replaces them with the grim determination of an overworked employee. And the boss and the employee are one and the same. Finally, this internal rush has created a profound disconnection from the world that birthed us, from the slow, wise rhythms of nature. For almost all of human history, our lives were paced by the sun and the seasons. The sunrise was a call to begin, the sunset an invitation to rest. The cycle of winter, spring, summer, and fall taught us about patience, about gestation, about periods of fallow rest and periods of vibrant growth. We have now created a world of artificial light and 24/7 availability, a world that runs on a single, monotonous season, the season of more. We have forgotten the wisdom of the moon, the patience of a seed, the unhurried grace of a tree. Our internal clocks have lost their true north, and so we feel perpetually jet-lagged, out of sync with the fundamental pulse of life itself. We seek refuge in concrete jungles and digital landscapes, forgetting that our own bodies are made of the same elements as the mountains and the rivers, and that our souls crave the same peace we find in a quiet forest. There is a simple, modern story that illustrates this condition perfectly. It is the story of a man named Richard, the CEO of a wildly successful tech company. He had everything the world tells you to want: a penthouse apartment, a portfolio of incredible wealth, a name that commanded respect in his industry. Yet, he was deeply, miserably unhappy. He suffered from chronic insomnia, a constant tightness in his chest, and the unshakable feeling that his life was a hollow performance. He went to a wise doctor, expecting a prescription for a powerful sleeping pill or an anti-anxiety medication. The doctor listened to him for a long time and then wrote on a prescription pad. Richard took the paper and read the strange instructions. It said, "Go to the park for 15 minutes every day. Sit on a bench. Do nothing." Richard was baffled, even insulted. Do nothing? His entire identity was built on doing. But Desperate, he decided to try. The first day was torture. He fidgeted. His mind raced. The urge to check his phone was a physical craving. He lasted 5 minutes before fleeing. The second day was the same. But by the end of the week, something shifted. He sat on the bench, and for the first time, he actually saw the world around him. He noticed the way an old man patiently threw breadcrumbs to the pigeons. He saw the vibrant, impossible green of the moss growing on the side of the bench. He heard the sound of children's laughter, not as a distraction, but as a kind of music. He did nothing, and in that nothingness, he began to feel everything. The tightness in his chest began to loosen, not because he had solved a problem, but because he had stopped trying to. Richard's story is our story. We are all, in our own way, a successful CEO with an impoverished soul. We have been running so fast for so long that we have forgotten why we started running in the first place. The tyranny of speed promises connection, success, and fulfillment, but it is a bankrupt king. It drapes us in chains of gold and tells us they are ornaments. We have now seen the bars of this prison. We have felt their cold, hard reality. The question, then, is not whether we are captive, but whether we are willing to be free. And the key to that freedom, the first step on the path out of the noise and back to ourselves, is not found in a grand escape plan or a dramatic rebellion. It is found in the smallest, most accessible, and most radical of acts. An act we will explore next, the simple, revolutionary act of the pause. Having seen that we are the archers of our own greatest sorrows, that we add a second arrow of suffering to the inevitable pain of life, we are now ready to look more closely at the landscape of our experience. We must investigate the very nature of this feeling that shadows us, this subtle disquiet that persists even when things are, by all accounts, going well. To do this, we must turn to a word, a concept that sits at the very heart of the Buddha's teaching. It is a word often misunderstood, often painted in shades of grey, but it is, in reality, a word of profound clarity and hope. The word is dukkha. To the Western ear, dukkha is almost always translated as suffering, and while this is not entirely wrong, it is deeply incomplete. To equate dukkha only with suffering is like describing the entire ocean by showing a picture of a single crashing wave. The wave is part of the ocean, yes, but it fails to capture the immense depth, the silent currents, the subtle ebbs and flows that define the whole. Dukkha is not just the loud, crashing wave of tragedy. It is the constant, underlying current of our conditioned existence. A more accurate, more encompassing translation might be unsatisfactoriness, or dis-ease, or a fundamental unrest. It is the low-grade hum of discontent that we feel in the quiet moments. It is the stone in the shoe, not large enough to make us scream in pain, but always there, preventing true, effortless comfort. It is the sense that something is just slightly out of tune, that the picture is hanging just a little bit crooked on the wall of our life. The Buddha, in his role as the great physician of the mind, did not present this as a bleak condemnation of life. He presented it as a diagnosis, a clear, honest, and courageous diagnosis. Without a proper diagnosis, there can be no cure. And in his profound wisdom, he saw that this unsatisfactoriness, this dukkha, manifests in 3 distinct, though often overlapping, forms. Understanding these 3 shades of dukkha is the first step in seeing our lives with radical honesty. The first type is the most obvious, the one that most closely aligns with our common idea of suffering. It is called dukkha, or the dukkha of painful experiences. This is the pain of the body and the pain of the mind in their most raw and recognizable forms. It is the searing pain of a migraine, the chronic ache in a joint, the weakness of illness. It is the sharp sting of betrayal, the hollow emptiness of grief when we lose someone we love, the burn of humiliation after a public failure. It is the anxiety that knots our stomach before a difficult conversation, and the despair that can descend like a heavy fog. This is the first arrow, the unavoidable pains and sorrows that are woven into the fabric of a human life. No one is immune. To be born is to be subject to sickness, aging, and death. To love is to open ourselves to the possibility of loss. To strive is to face the possibility of failure. Dukkha is the plain and simple truth that life includes pain. The path of wisdom does not promise an escape from this. It does not offer a magic shield to deflect these first arrows. It simply acknowledges them, without drama or resistance, as a fundamental condition of our world. It is the second form of dukkha, however, that begins to reveal the true subtlety of the Buddha's insight. This is viparinama dukkha, the dukkha of change, or the suffering of pleasant experiences. This sounds like a contradiction. How can pleasure be a form of suffering? The wisdom here lies in recognizing the impermanent nature of that pleasure. Every pleasant experience, by its very nature, must come to an end. And because we cling to it, because we desperately want it to last forever, the very seeds of its ending are sown within the joy itself. Think of the most perfect vacation you've ever had. The sun is warm, the sea is blue, the company is perfect. There is a deep sense of peace and happiness. But even in the midst of that joy, a subtle thought can arise. I wish this would never end. And in that very thought, dukkha is born. We are no longer fully present with the beautiful moment. We are already anticipating its loss. The last day of the vacation is often tinged with a unique sadness, a preemptive nostalgia for what is not yet even gone. The pleasure has become a source of pain because of our attachment to it. Consider the joy of a new car. The first few weeks are wonderful. It's clean, it smells new, it works perfectly. But soon, the novelty fades. It gets its first scratch, its first stain. It becomes just a car. The peak of the pleasure was fleeting, and its decline is a subtle form of dukkha. We are then driven to seek the next new thing, the next peak experience, in a never-ending cycle of desire and disappointment. This is the engine of consumerism. This is the hedonic treadmill. Viparinama dukkha is the profound truth that no external object, no fleeting experience, can provide lasting, stable happiness. As long as our peace is dependent on things that change, our peace itself will be unstable. The happiness we chase is like trying to hold water in our hands. For a moment it feels cool and refreshing, but inevitably it slips through our fingers, leaving us wanting more. This leads us to the third and most subtle, most pervasive form of dukkha. It is called sankhara dukkha, the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the background radiation of unsatisfactoriness that permeates all life simply because life is constructed, fabricated, and dependent on shifting conditions. It is the fundamental insecurity of being a self that is made up of constantly changing parts. Our body is changing with every breath. Our feelings arise and vanish in moments. Our thoughts are a relentless, churning river. Our perceptions are colored by our past experiences and future fears. The world around us is in constant flux. There is nothing solid, nothing permanent, nothing truly reliable to grasp onto. Imagine building the most beautiful, intricate house of cards. You can admire it, you can be proud of it, but you can never truly relax. You are in a constant state of low-level tension, knowing that a single breath, a slight tremor, could bring the whole thing tumbling down. Our sense of self, our life, is this house of cards. Sankhara dukkha is this background tension. It is the inherent unsatisfactoriness of relying on unreliable things. There is a story of a great king who had everything a person could possibly desire. He had conquered all his enemies, so there was no fear of invasion. His treasuries were overflowing with gold and jewels. He had magnificent palaces, loyal subjects, a loving family, and access to every conceivable pleasure. He had eliminated, as much as any human can, the obvious suffering of dukkha. He was surrounded by the pleasant experiences that we believe will make us happy, though he had grown weary of their fleeting nature, a sign of viparinama dukkha. Yet, despite all this, he was not at peace. At night, he would walk the marble corridors of his palace, feeling a profound and nameless emptiness. He had everything, and yet, something was fundamentally missing. The feeling was a deep, quiet anxiety. It was the feeling that this whole elaborate construction of his life, his power, his very identity as king, was ultimately fragile, contingent, and not entirely real. What the king was feeling was sankhara dukkha. It was the existential angst of a conditioned being, the inherent stress of being a temporary assembly of changing physical and mental phenomena, masquerading as a solid, permanent self. To acknowledge these three forms of dukkha is not to be a pessimist, it is to be a realist. It is an act of immense courage. It is like finally turning on the light in a dark room you've been stumbling around in for years. You may not like everything you see, but now, for the first time, you can navigate without bumping into the furniture. You can see things as they are. The first noble truth, the truth of dukkha, is this act of turning on the light. It says, here is the situation, here is the nature of the disease. It does not say that life is miserable. It says that the way we typically relate to life, by clinging to the pleasant, rejecting the unpleasant, and being ignorant of the conditioned nature of it all, inevitably leads to unsatisfactoriness. It is a diagnosis of a condition, not a judgment on existence itself. And this is the most hopeful message of all. Because once a physician has given a clear diagnosis, the next, most logical step is to identify the cause and then to prescribe the cure. By looking dukkha squarely in the eye, by understanding its different forms in our own lives, the obvious pain, the fading of joy, the deep background hum of insecurity, we have taken the first, essential step on a path toward genuine, lasting freedom. We have stopped pretending the stone in our shoe isn't there. Now, we can finally sit down, take off the shoe, and shake it out. Having bravely faced this diagnosis, this fundamental truth of dukkha, we must ask the next logical question. Why, precisely, are things this way? Why is everything marked by this subtle dissatisfaction? The answer, as profound as it is simple, lies in the universal law of change, the ceaseless flow of impermanence. We have stood before the honest diagnosis of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness that runs like a subtle thread through our lives. We have acknowledged the obvious pains, the sting of fading pleasures, and the deep, foundational insecurity of our existence. To name the condition is the first step. The next is to understand its cause. Why is this so? Why is life marked by this fundamental dis-ease? The Buddha's answer to this question is not found in a complex theological doctrine or a divine mystery, but in the observation of a simple, profound, and universal law. It is the law of change, the law of impermanence. In the ancient language of the path, it is known as Anicca. Anicca is the truth that nothing is static. Everything flows. The entire cosmos, from the unimaginably vast to the infinitesimally small, is in a constant state of becoming and dissolving. The mountains that seem so solid and eternal are slowly being worn down by wind and rain. The stars that glitter in the night sky were born from cosmic dust and will one day exhaust their fuel and die. Great empires rise, build monuments to their own permanence, and then crumble into ruin, their cities reclaimed by jungle and sand. This is the grand, impersonal dance of the universe. It is a reality so total, so absolute, that we often fail to see it, like a fish that is unaware of the water in which it swims. But the wisdom of Anicca is not meant to be an abstract astronomical or historical lesson. Its true power is revealed when we turn its lens upon our own lives, upon our most intimate experience. When we do, we discover that we are not separate from this universal flow. We are the flow. Consider your own body. You think of it as yours, as a solid, continuous thing, but it is in a constant, relentless state of flux. With every breath, you take in elements from the world and release others back out. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced at this very moment. The body you have today is not the same body you had 7 years ago. The face that looked back at you from the mirror this morning is subtly different from the one that will see you tomorrow. We try to fight this process. We invest immense energy, time, and money to halt the signs of aging, to preserve a youthful appearance, to create an illusion of permanence in our physical form. Yet, the river of change flows on, indifferent to our efforts. Our body is not a static sculpture. It is a temporary process, a wave in the ocean of existence. The same is true, even more dramatically, for our inner world. Think of your emotions. Where is the anger you felt last week? Where is the ecstatic joy from a past celebration? They arose. They seemed to consume your entire reality for a time, and then they vanished. Emotions are like the weather. A storm of rage can darken our inner sky, followed by a period of calm, then perhaps a fog of sadness, which eventually gives way to the clear sunshine of happiness. We make a fundamental error when we identify with the weather. We say, "I am angry," or "I am sad." We fuse our sense of self with a fleeting emotional state. Wisdom is realizing we are not the weather, but the sky in which the weather occurs. The sky allows the clouds to come and go without being defined by them. Anicca teaches us that our feelings are transient visitors, not permanent residents. And what of our thoughts? The mind is an even more turbulent river. Sit for just 1 minute and try to hold on to a single thought. It is nearly impossible. The mind churns. It produces memories, plans, judgments, fantasies, and fragments of songs in a ceaseless torrent. We believe we are the thinker of our thoughts, but more often than not, the thoughts simply think themselves. We are carried along by their current, often to places of anxiety about the future or regret about the past. We try to dam this river, to force our mind into a state of quiet, but this only creates more struggle and tension. The practice of mindfulness is not about stopping the river, but about sitting on the bank and watching it flow by, without being swept away by every piece of driftwood that passes. This law of Anicca is the direct cause of the dukkha we experience. It is crucial to understand this point. Change itself is not suffering. Impermanence is not suffering. The suffering is caused by our resistance to change. It is caused by our clinging, our grasping, our desperate attempt to hold on to things that are, by their very nature, ungraspable. Imagine you are in a swift-moving river. If you try to stand still, if you grab onto a rock or a branch on the shore, the full force of the current will batter you. You will be pulled, twisted, and exhausted by your struggle against the natural flow. This is clinging. This is suffering. But if you relax, if you let go of the bank and allow yourself to float with the current, the struggle ceases. You are still moving. You are still in the river, but you are moving with a sense of ease. You are flowing with life, rather than fighting against it. This is acceptance. This is the beginning of peace. There is a beautiful story of a wise old monk and his young disciple sitting on a beach. The monk spent a long time carefully drawing a large, intricate, and beautiful circle in the wet sand. The disciple watched, admiring the perfection of the design. As the monk finished, the tide began to roll in. The disciple grew anxious. "Master," he said, "the waves, they are coming to destroy your beautiful drawing." The old monk simply smiled. The waves came, and in a single foamy wash, the intricate circle vanished completely. The disciple was heartbroken. "It's gone," he whispered sadly. The monk placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said, "The problem was not that the waves would wash it away. The nature of waves is to wash. The nature of sand is to be washed. The problem was that you believed a drawing made of sand was meant to be permanent. We spend our lives drawing circles in the sand. We form attachments to people, to possessions, to our jobs, to our identities, to our youth, to our very lives, and we expect them to be permanent. Then, when the inevitable tide of Anicca comes and washes them away, we are heartbroken. We blame the tide, but the tide is just doing what the tide does. The suffering comes from our unrealistic expectation, from our failure to understand the nature of the sand. To truly embrace the wisdom of Anicca is not to become apathetic or nihilistic. It is the exact opposite. It is the key to a more vibrant, appreciative, and resilient life. When you know that every moment is fleeting, you begin to pay more attention. You cherish the warmth of the sun on your skin, the taste of your food, the sound of a loved one's laughter, because you know it is a precious, unrepeatable gift. The knowledge of its ending makes the experience itself more vivid, more alive. Furthermore, an understanding of Anicca is the ultimate source of resilience. When you are in the midst of a difficult period of time of grief, illness, or failure, the wisdom of Anicca is a comforting whisper. This, too, shall pass. It reminds you that no state is permanent, that the darkest night will eventually give way to dawn. It prevents you from falling into the trap of despair, the belief that the current pain will last forever. It gives you the strength to endure, knowing that the river is always moving. The practical path to this wisdom is simple, yet profound. It begins with observation. You don't need to go to a monastery or read 100 books. You simply need to watch the process of change in your own experience. The most accessible place to start is with your own breath. Sit quietly and just notice the breath flowing in and the breath flowing out. The in-breath arises. It exists for a few moments, and then it ceases. It dissolves, making space for the out-breath to arise. It is a perfect, miniature cycle of Anicca happening within you right now. By paying attention to this simple, natural process, you are training your mind to see the nature of reality. You are learning to dance with the flow. We have now seen that our world, both inside and out, is a relentless, dynamic, ever-changing flow. We have seen that our suffering comes not from the flow itself, but from our attempts to stand still within it. We have looked at our changing bodies, our changing feelings, and our changing thoughts. A powerful, and perhaps even unsettling, question naturally follows this realization. If everything I identify with my body, my feelings, my thoughts is in a constant state of flux, where, then, is the permanent I that is experiencing all of this? If everything is a process, who is the one at the center of it all? Is there a solid, unchanging self at the core of our being? Or is the observer itself just another part of the impermanent flow? This question leads us directly to the next great pillar of Buddhist wisdom, the truth of Anatta, of no self. We have journeyed together into the heart of a powerful truth, the law of Anicca, or impermanence. We have watched as the solid ground beneath our feet has revealed itself to be a flowing river. Our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, the world itself, all are caught in this ceaseless dance of arising and passing away. And this realization has led us to a profound and perhaps unsettling question. If everything I thought defined me is in constant flux, where is the I that is witnessing it all? Who is the watcher of this change? This inquiry takes us to the very center of the Buddha's liberating insight, to a teaching that is often misunderstood, sometimes feared, but which holds the key to the deepest freedom imaginable. This is the teaching of Anatta, or no self. Let us be very clear from the outset, because this concept can be easily misinterpreted by the Western mind, which is so deeply conditioned to believe in a solid, individual soul or self. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It is not a doctrine of annihilation or nihilism. The consciousness that is hearing these words, the body that is sitting, the feelings that are present within you right now, these are all undeniably real experiences. The teaching of Anatta is not a denial of your existence, but a radical re-examination of its nature. It simply states that within this entire, complex, flowing process of mind and body, if you go looking for a separate, permanent, unchanging, Korya central command, a CEO, a soul that is the owner of your experiences, you will not find one. The self, we feel so intimately, is not a solid entity, but a dynamic process. It is not a noun, but a verb. It is a temporary assembly of interdependent parts, a beautiful, intricate pattern that is constantly reweaving itself from moment to moment. The most brilliant illustration of this comes from a classic Buddhist text. In a conversation between a sage named Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda. The king, a man of logic and reason, approached Nagasena and asked his name. Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, Your Majesty, but this is only a designation, a convenient name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king was incredulous, a classic reaction. He challenged Nagasena, "If there is no person, then who wears the robes? Who eats the food? Who meditates?" He then used an analogy. "You arrived here in a chariot. So what is the chariot? Is it the wheels? Is it the axle? Is it the frame, the yoke, or the reins?" The king believed he had trapped Nagasena in a logical paradox. But the wise sage, with a calm smile, turned the king's own logic back upon him. He asked, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here?" The king replied, "In a chariot." Nagasena then began to deconstruct the idea. "Is the chariot the pole?" he asked. "No," said the king. "Is it the axle? Number, the wheels, the frame, the ropes, the yoke?" With each question, the king was forced to answer, "Number." Nagasena then concluded, "Then, Your Majesty, is the chariot something other than these parts?" The king had to admit it was not. Nagasena then delivered the final, illuminating insight. Your Majesty, you yourself have said that the chariot is just a convenient name, a designation for the coming together of the pole, the axle, the wheels, and all its other parts. In exactly the same way, Nagasena is a convenient designation for the coming together of this body, these feelings, these perceptions, these mental formations, and this consciousness. But when you examine them one by one, there is no permanent Nagasena to be found. This beautiful story reveals the essence of Anatta. The self we cherish is like the chariota useful convention, a name we give to a collection of parts working in unison. To understand this more deeply, the Buddha analyzed our experience into 5 categories, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These are the components that we mistake for a solid self. First, there is form. This is the physical body, with all its parts and processes. As we saw when we looked at Anicca, this body is a river of change, not a solid statue. It is not a permanent thing. So, the self cannot be found in the body. Second, there are feelings. These are the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations that arise from contact with the world. They are like the weather, constantly shifting, unreliable, and fleeting. They come and go. So, the self cannot be found in our feelings. Third, there is perception. This is the faculty of recognition, the part of the mind that identifies and labels things: blue, tree, sound, danger. Our perceptions are conditioned by our language, our culture, and our past experiences. They are not a pure reflection of reality, and they are constantly changing. So, the self cannot be found in our perceptions. Fourth, there are mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all our thoughts, our intentions, our habits, our biases, our desires, our fears, and our dreams. This is the churning, active part of the mind, the ceaseless internal chatter. This, as anyone who has tried to meditate knows, is the very definition of impermanence. So, the self cannot be found in our thoughts. Finally, there is consciousness. This is the raw faculty of awareness itself, which arises when one of our sense organs meets a sense object. There is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness, and so on. But this awareness is not a monolithic, continuous spotlight. It too flickers, it arises, and ceases with each moment of contact. It is dependent on conditions. So, even in pure awareness, no permanent independent self can be found. This is the Buddha's profound analysis. The being you call myself is the dynamic, interdependent play of these 5 flowing processes. There is no ghost in the machine. There is no little person sitting inside your head, pulling the levers. The process itself is creating the illusion of a controller. You may ask, why does this matter? Why is it so important to see this? It matters because the belief in a solid, separate self is the root cause of so much of our dukkha. This fictional self, this ego, is a little fortress we spend our entire lives building and defending. From behind its walls, we see the world in terms of me and mine. This creates a fundamental sense of separation, of alienation from others and from the world. It fuels our greed, as I want to accumulate things to enhance my fortress. It fuels our hatred, as I feel threatened by anything that challenges my fortress. It is the source of endless anxiety, as we constantly worry about our reputation, what others think of me, and how I measure up. And most of all, it is the source of our deepest fear, the fear of death, which is the fear of the annihilation of this cherished self. To begin to see through this illusion is to begin a process of profound liberation. When the grip of the ego begins to loosen, something amazing happens. When there is less self to defend, you don't take things so personally. The criticism of others becomes just feedback, not an attack on your core being. Failure becomes an event from which to learn, not a final judgment on your worth. You become lighter, more flexible, more resilient. When the walls of the self become more transparent, a natural compassion and connection with others arises. The rigid boundary between my suffering and your suffering begins to dissolve. We see that we are all caught in the same currents of Anicca and Dukkha. We are all interconnected processes, not separate islands. This seeing is the very foundation of true empathy and loving kindness. Finally, the fear of death begins to lose its terrifying power. When you understand that there was never a solid thing to begin with, what is there to be annihilated? A wave arises from the ocean, takes a unique form for a time, and then dissolves back into the ocean. Was the wave destroyed? No, it simply returned to its source. The water remains. Anatta teaches us that we are like that wave. We are a temporary manifestation of the universe, a process, not a static entity. The fear of our ending loses its sting when we realize there was never a separate us to begin with. So here we stand, at a point of profound insight. We have seen that the fundamental condition of our lives is one of unsatisfactoriness, dukkha. We have understood that this arises because we cling to things that are impermanent, Anicca. And we have discovered that the very clinger itself, the fixed, separate self we thought we were, is an illusion, a process, not a thing, Anatta. This is the diagnosis in its full depth. But the Buddha was not a philosopher of despair. He was the great physician, and having laid bare the nature of the illness, he then provided a clear, practical, and hopeful path to its cure. This path is framed within his first and most essential teaching, the Four Noble Truths. We have seen that the root of our profound dis-ease, our dukkha, is a deep and persistent thirst, a craving known as tanha. It is the relentless grasping for what we find pleasant and the desperate pushing away of what we find unpleasant. This mechanism of craving and aversion is the engine of our anxiety, the source of the second arrow we fire into ourselves. But this raises a crucial question. What is it, exactly, that we are trying to grasp? What are we trying to hold on to so tightly? We are not just clinging to objects or experiences. We are clinging to an idea, an assumption about the very nature of reality that is fundamentally flawed. We operate as if the world, our lives, our feelings, and our very selves are solid, stable, and permanent. We try to build a fortress of happiness on ground that is constantly shifting beneath our feet. And this brings us to one of the most profound and liberating truths taught by the Buddha, one of the three marks of all existence, a truth called Anicca. Anicca is a word from the ancient Pali language, and its meaning is simple, yet its implications are vast. It means impermanence, change, flux. It is the radical recognition that everything, without exception, is in a constant state of arising, changing, and passing away. There is nothing in the entire cosmos, from the grandest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, that you can point to and say, this will last forever. It is a universal law, as fundamental as gravity. Yet, while we have no problem accepting that an apple will fall from a tree, we live in a state of constant war against the law of impermanence. And it is this war, this resistance to the way things are, that fuels the very suffering we long to escape. Let us look at this truth, not as a cold, abstract philosophy, but as a living reality. Look first at your own body. We invest so much energy in our physical form. We praise it when it is young and healthy, and we despair when it ages and sickens. We try to freeze it in time with creams, diets, and exercise. But the body is a perfect, undeniable manifestation of Anicca. From the moment of conception, it is in a process of ceaseless change. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced in the time it takes to listen to this sentence. The child you were is gone. The teenager you were is gone. The person you were 1 year ago is gone, replaced by the current collection of cells and processes you call me. Sickness may visit, health may return, strength may wane. To cling to a particular state, to youth, to an image of perfect health, is to set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment. To embrace Anicca is to learn to care for the body we have today, in this moment, with kindness and respect, without demanding that it remain unchanged tomorrow. Then, consider your feelings, your emotions. They are even more fluid, more transient than the body. A wave of joy washes over you, perhaps from a kind word or a beautiful sunset. The mind immediately grasps it. This feels so good. I want more of this. I hope this feeling never ends. We cling to it, and in the very act of clinging, we introduce a subtle tension, a fear of its departure. And of course, it does depart. No feeling lasts forever. The joy subsides, and because we were clinging, we are left with a sense of loss, of lack. Then a wave of sadness or frustration arises, perhaps from a difficult interaction or a disappointment. The mind immediately resists. I don't want this. Get this feeling away from me. Why is this happening to me? We push it away, we fight it, and our resistance acts like fuel on the fire, intensifying the suffering and prolonging its stay. The wisdom of Anicca offers a different way. It invites us to see our feelings not as us, but as weather patterns passing through the vast, open sky of our awareness. When a storm cloud appears, you don't become the storm cloud. You remain the sky, allowing it to gather, rain, and eventually pass on. We can learn to do the same with our emotions, meeting them with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness, knowing this too shall pass. And what about our thoughts? They are the most ephemeral of all. A thought is like a bubble rising to the surface of water. It appears for a moment, and then it is gone. Yet, we give them such tremendous power. We take a fleeting, random thought, and we build a house on it. A thought of self-doubt arises, and we believe it. We mistake it for a fundamental truth about who we are. A memory of a past hurt flashes through the mind, and we relive it, replaying the drama, firing that second arrow again and again. A fantasy about the future appears, and we get lost in it, creating expectations that reality may never meet. The practice of observing impermanence is the practice of seeing thoughts for what they are. Simply thoughts, not commands, not absolute truths, just momentary mental events, arising and ceasing like whispers on the wind. When we see this directly, their power to control us diminishes dramatically. We are no longer a prisoner of every thought that wanders into the mind. This relentless flow is just as true for the world around us. Relationships are not static entities. They are dynamic processes, constantly evolving. The person you love today is not the exact same person you met. To demand they never change is to deny their humanity. Careers have their seasons of growth and decline. Fortunes are made and lost. The very planet we live on is in a state of constant, magnificent transformation. To resist this is like trying to command the tides to stop. It is a futile and exhausting struggle. It would be easy to hear this and feel a sense of despair, a kind of cosmic pessimism. If nothing lasts, what's the point? But this is a misunderstanding. The truth of Anicca is not a curse. It is the gateway to profound hope and freedom. The beauty of impermanence is that it makes everything possible. If things were permanent, a state of suffering would be a life sentence. A mistake could never be undone. Forgiveness would be impossible. A broken relationship could never heal. A mind clouded by anxiety could never become clear. It is precisely because things change that growth is possible. It is because of impermanence that we can learn, transform, and awaken. The past does not have to define the future. This very moment is fresh and new, full of potential, precisely because it is not fixed. So how do we practice this? How do we move from intellectually understanding impermanence to embodying its wisdom? The key is to cultivate the habit of observation in our daily lives. When you drink a cup of tea, truly notice the warmth in your hands, the aroma, the taste. This exact experience will never happen again. Appreciate it for what it is, a fleeting, precious moment. When you feel a strong emotion, instead of immediately reacting, can you pause and just notice it? Where do you feel it in your body? Is it a tightness in the chest, a heat in the face? Just watch it as a curious scientist and see how it shifts and changes all on its own. In meditation, this is the core of the practice. We watch the breath, feeling the sensation of the inhale and the sensation of the exhale. Each breath is born, it lives its short life, and it dies, making way for the next. It is a constant, gentle lesson in Anicca. There is a famous story about a great Zen master who had a beautiful, delicate teacup. He cherished this cup and used it every day. One day, a student asked him, "Master, you speak of non-attachment, yet you seem to love this cup so much. Are you not attached to it?" The master smiled and said, "I love this cup, and every time I drink from it, I enjoy its beauty. But in my mind, this cup is already broken. I know that its nature is to one day break, so I am free to enjoy it completely now, without the fear of losing it." Some time later, the cup was accidentally knocked from a table and shattered on the floor. The students were distraught, but the master simply looked at the pieces and said, calmly, "Ah, it is time." Because he had already accepted its impermanence, its loss did not cause him deep suffering. He had not loved it less. In fact, he had loved it more fully, because he understood its precious, fragile nature. This is the shift in perspective that the wisdom of Anicca offers us. It is not about becoming cold and detached. It is about learning to love the world and our lives more deeply, more authentically, without the desperate, painful clinging that turns love into a source of fear. It is to participate fully in the dance of life, knowing that the song will eventually end. We have now looked deeply into the constant flow of reality. We have seen that our bodies are changing, our feelings are changing, our thoughts are changing, and the entire world around us is in a constant, dynamic flux. This naturally leads to the next profound inquiry. If everything we identify with, everything we call me, is impermanent, then who or what is the I that is experiencing all of this? What is this self that we spend our entire lives trying to please and protect? As we peel back the layers of our experience, looking for a solid, unchanging core, we come face to face with the next great mark of existence, a concept as challenging as it is liberating, the truth of no self, or Anatta. We have journeyed to the edge of a profound insight. By observing the relentless flow of reality, we have come to see the truth of Anicca, or impermanence. We have seen that our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, and the world itself are like a river in a state of constant, ceaseless change. This realization is the key that unlocks the next door, one that leads to the very heart of the Buddha's teaching, and perhaps the most challenging and radical idea for the modern mind to grasp. It is the truth of Anatta, or no self. If everything we experience is in flux, if nothing is permanent, then what is this I that we believe is at the center of our universe? Who is it that is experiencing all this change? We spend our entire lives polishing, promoting, and protecting this entity we call me. But if we have the courage to look for it, what do we actually find? Let it be said from the outset, the teaching of Anatta is not a declaration that you do not exist. It is not an argument for nihilism or a denial of your unique life experience. You are here. You are listening. Your life matters. Rather, Anatta is a profound psychological insight that points to the way you exist. It suggests that what we call the self is not a solid, continuous, independent entity, a little person sitting inside our heads pulling the levers. Instead, the self is an ever-changing, interdependent process. It is more like a verb than a noun. To understand this, the Buddha provided a brilliant and practical map, a way to deconstruct our own experience into its component parts. This map is called the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. These are the 5 heaps, or bundles of processes, that we mistake for a solid self. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is the material aspect of our existence, our physical body. It includes our flesh, our bones, our breath, and all the sensory organs like our eyes and ears. As we've already explored, this aggregate is a clear and undeniable display of impermanence. It is constantly changing, aging, and is entirely dependent on external conditions like food, water, and air to continue. If we look closely at this ever-changing physical form, can we find a permanent me within it? Is your body the same as it was 7 years ago? Clearly, it is not. So the self cannot be equated with the body. The body is something we have, not something we are. The second aggregate is feeling, or vedana. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our sense organs make contact with the world. These feelings are categorized into 3 simple types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day is a pleasant feeling. The sound of a loud alarm is an unpleasant feeling. The sensation of your clothes against your skin might be neutral. These feelings are happening constantly, a relentless stream of data flowing into our system. They are fleeting, dependent, and utterly impersonal. A pleasant feeling arises, and it passes away. An unpleasant feeling arises, and it passes away. Is this constant flickering stream of pleasant and unpleasant sensations the real, solid you? If you were your feelings, you would cease to exist when a feeling ends, and a new you would be born with every new sensation. This is clearly not the case. The third aggregate is perception, or sana. This is the faculty of recognition, the mental process that identifies and labels the raw data provided by our feelings. The eye sees a shape and a color that is feeling. The mind recognizes it and labels it a red car. That is perception. The ear hears a sound. That is feeling. The mind recognizes the tone and labels it an angry voice. that is perception. This process is shaped by our past experiences, our memory, and our language. It is a necessary function for navigating the world, but it is not a stable self. Our perceptions can be wrong, they can be biased, and they change as we learn new things. The angry voice might just be a person who is in a hurry. Is this labeling, recognizing faculty, the essential me number? It is just another conditioned, changing process. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a broad and crucial category. It includes all of our mental habits, our reactions, our thoughts, our biases, our opinions, our prejudices, our intentions, and the stories we tell ourselves. When perception labels a sound as an angry voice, the mental formation that follows might be the thought, "He is angry at me," followed by the intention to defend oneself. These are the deep grooves in the record of our mind, the conditioned patterns that drive our behavior: greed, hatred, kindness, generosity, anxiety, peace. They are all mental formations. This aggregate is what gives us our seeming personality. But these formations are not solid. They are learned habits. And because they are learned, they can be unlearned. Through mindfulness and training, we can create new, more skillful mental formations. So, is this collection of habits and reactions the permanent, unchanging you number? It is the most malleable part of our experience. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This can be understood as the basic quality of awareness itself. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, tasting consciousness, touching consciousness, and thinking consciousness. It is the light that illuminates the objects of our experience. However, the Buddha pointed out that consciousness is not some monolithic, independent background awareness. It always arises in dependence upon an object. Seeing consciousness cannot arise without an eye and a form. Hearing consciousness cannot arise without an ear and a sound. It is not a continuous entity, but rather a flickering process, arising and ceasing moment by moment as our senses engage with the world. Is this flickering, dependent awareness the true, independent self? Again, the answer is no. When we look for a self in any one of these 5 heaps, we cannot find one. And if it is not in any of the individual parts, it cannot be found as a whole. This brings us to a beautiful and famous story from the Buddhist texts, the dialogue between the sage Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda. The king, seeking to test Nagasina's wisdom, asks him his name. Nagasena replies that he is known as Nagasena, but that this is just a designation, a name for a temporary collection of parts. The king is confused. He asks, if there is no person, who is it that wears the robes and eats the food? Nagasena then turns the question back on the king, who arrived in a magnificent chariot. Nagasena asks, "Your Majesty, is the chariot the pole? Is it the axle, the wheels, the frame, the reins?" To each question, the king answers no. Then, Nagasena concludes, "Is the chariot all of these parts combined?" The king again says no. Then, is the chariot something outside of these parts? No, venerable sir. Nagasena then declares, "Your Majesty, I cannot discover any chariot. Chariot is just a sound, a name, a convenient designation for this collection of parts assembled in this way." The king is delighted and understands. Nagasena then explains that Nagasena is exactly the same. It is just a convenient name for the dynamic, flowing process of the 5 aggregates. This is the essence of Anatta. The self is a convention, a useful label for a process. It is like a wave in the ocean. A wave is a real phenomenon. You can see it. but you cannot take it out of the ocean and put it in a bucket. The wave is nothing but the ocean in a temporary, moving form. Similarly, yourself is nothing but life itself, the universe itself, in a temporary, moving form. Why is this insight so profoundly liberating? Because most of our anxiety, fear, and sorrow comes from the exhausting, lifelong project of defending this illusory self. We feel hurt when we are criticized because we believe a solid me is being attacked. We feel terrified of failure because it threatens our story of being a successful person. We feel deep grief at loss because we believe a part of our permanent self has been taken away. When we begin to see that the self is a fluid process, not a fragile statue, the entire dynamic changes. There is less to defend. Criticism can be seen for what it is, just information, fleeting sounds, and perceptions. Failure can be seen not as an indictment of our core being, but as part of the learning process of life. The constant, anxious self-monitoring begins to soften. Furthermore, the illusion of a solid, separate self is the very root of our sense of alienation and loneliness. It creates the primary division of me here and the rest of the world out there. When this hard boundary begins to dissolve, an incredible sense of connection arises. We start to see that the suffering of others is not separate from our own. Their desire for happiness is the same as our own. Compassion is no longer a moral duty, but the natural expression of this interconnectedness. This profound understanding of Anicca and Anatta, of impermanence and no self, completes the diagnosis of our condition. We suffer because we thirst for permanence in a world that is always changing, and we grasp for a solid self that is, in reality, a flowing, selfless process. This insight is deep, and it can be unsettling, but it is not the end of the story. It is the necessary foundation upon which true freedom can be built. For if the Buddha had only diagnosed the illness and its cause, his teaching would be a bleak one, but he did much more. He declared that there is a cure. He announced that there is an end to suffering, and he laid out a clear, practical, and noble path to reach it. This brings us to the final two noble truths, the promise of an end to suffering and the eightfold path that leads to that end. We have walked together into the deep and sometimes challenging truths of the human condition. We have looked without flinching at the first noble truth, the reality of dukkha, the pervasive undercurrent of dissatisfaction and stress that marks so much of our lives. We have investigated its source, the second noble truth, uncovering the relentless engine of tanha, the craving and clinging that fuels our discontent. And we have explored the very ground upon which this drama plays out, a world defined by Anicca, impermanence, and a self defined by Anatta, a selfless, flowing process. At this point, one might feel a certain weight. The diagnosis can seem severe. It can feel as though we are lost in a maze, clinging to illusions in a world of smoke. If this is the human condition, is there any hope for genuine, lasting peace? It is precisely here, at this crucial juncture, that the Buddha's teaching pivots from a profound diagnosis to a message of radiant, earth-shaking hope. The entire purpose of understanding the illness so clearly is to realize that a cure is possible. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. Nirodha is a Pali word that means cessation, ending, or containment. It is the truth that the cessation of suffering is entirely possible. It is the definitive statement that there is an exit from the maze. There is a way to quench the fires of craving, aversion, and ignorance that cause us so much pain. This state of cessation is known as nirvana, a word that has been shrouded in much mystery and misunderstanding. So let us be very clear about what it is and what it is not. Nirvana is not a heavenly paradise you go to after you die. While it has profound implications for the cycle of life and death, its most vital meaning is as a psychological reality that can be experienced in this very life, here and now. Nor is nirvana an act of annihilation, a snuffing out of your existence. It is not the self that is annihilated, for we have seen that a solid, separate self was an illusion to begin with. What is extinguished, what is brought to an end, are the defilements of the mind. It is the extinguishing of the fire of greed, the extinguishing of the fire of hatred, the extinguishing of the fire of delusion. Imagine a mind constantly at war, a mind caught in the civil war of I want this and I don't want that. Nirodha is the peace that comes when that war is over. Imagine a lake, its waters churned and muddy from relentless winds. Nirodha is the crystal clarity of that lake once the winds have died down and the mud has settled, allowing it to perfectly reflect the sky above. Nirvana is not a state of blissful blankness, but a state of profound, unshakable peace, luminous clarity, and boundless compassion. It is the mind's natural, uncovered state, the radiant purity that was always there, hidden beneath the clouds of our conditioning. The promise of Nirodha is the most optimistic message ever delivered to humanity. Your suffering is not permanent. Freedom is possible. This structure of the teaching is no accident. The Buddha is often compared to a great and compassionate physician. A wise doctor first diagnoses the illness. He does not shy away from the truth of the symptoms. This is the first noble truth of Dukkha. A good doctor then investigates thoroughly to understand the root cause of the illness, knowing that treating only the symptoms is futile. This is the second noble truth of Tanha. But crucially, a great doctor also knows, with certainty, what a state of health looks like, and that it is achievable. This is the third noble truth of Nirodha, the prognosis of a full recovery. And finally, having understood the illness, its cause, and the possibility of a cure, the doctor prescribes a precise, detailed, and effective course of treatment to bring that cure about. This prescription is the fourth and final noble truth. It is the path itself. It is the Magga. Magga means the path, or the way. It is the noble eightfold path, a complete and holistic guide to life that leads directly to the cessation of suffering. This is the practical, actionable heart of the Buddha's teaching. It is not a set of commandments handed down from on high. It is a set of recommendations based on a deep understanding of cause and effect, a pragmatic guide for human flourishing. The path is called eightfold because it consists of 8 interconnected factors that are to be developed simultaneously. They are not a sequence of linear steps, like a ladder, but rather the interwoven strands of a single, powerful cable that pulls us toward liberation. These 8 factors are often grouped into 3 essential trainings. The first training is wisdom, or panna. This section of the path deals with seeing things as they truly are. It consists of 2 factors: right understanding and right thought. Right understanding is the intellectual and experiential grasp of the 4 noble truths themselves. It is the clear seeing of impermanence, selflessness, and the nature of suffering. Right thought, or right intention, is the cultivation of wholesome states of mind, consciously choosing intentions of kindness, letting go, and compassion, while abandoning intentions of greed, hatred, and cruelty. Wisdom is the map and the compass for the journey. The second training is ethical conduct, or sila. This is the application of wisdom into our daily interactions with the world. It is about living in a way that is skillful and harmless to ourselves and to others. It consists of 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right speech means speaking truthfully, kindly, and beneficially, and refraining from lies, slander, harsh words, and divisive gossip. Right action means acting in ways that respect life and the well-being of others, abstaining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Right livelihood means earning a living in a way that is honorable and does not bring harm to the world. Ethical conduct is the way we walk the path, ensuring our journey benefits all beings. The third training is mental discipline, or samadhi. This section of the path is about training the mind itself, transforming it from a wild and scattered force into a calm, focused, and powerful ally. It consists of the final 3 factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right effort is the gentle, persistent energy we apply to let go of unwholesome states and cultivate wholesome ones. Right mindfulness is the art of paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. It is the anchor of the mind. And right concentration is the development of a stable, unified, and peaceful mind through the practice of meditation, allowing for deep insight to arise. These 3 trainings, wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline, are mutually supportive. They are like the 3 legs of a stool. A stool with only 1 or 2 legs will be unstable and fall over. A person may have great wisdom, but if their actions are unethical, their wisdom is incomplete. A person may be very ethical, but if their mind is scattered and undisciplined, they will not find deep peace. A person may be a master of concentration, but if that concentration is not guided by wisdom and ethics, it can be misused. The Noble Eightfold Path is a complete system. It is the cultivation of the whole person. Perhaps the most empowering aspect of this path is the spirit in which it is offered. The Buddha did not say, "You must believe this, because I say so." His constant invitation was a phrase in Pali, "Ehipassiko," which means, "Come and see for yourself." It is an invitation to an experiment. It is a call to become a scientist of your own inner world. The path is not a dogma to be accepted on blind faith, but a set of practices to be lived and verified in your own experience. Does speaking more kindly lead to better relationships? Come and see. Does practicing mindfulness reduce your anxiety? Come and see. Does contemplating impermanence loosen the grip of clinging? Come and see. The proof is not in a sacred book, but in the texture of your own life as you walk the path. We now stand at the trailhead. The diagnosis of our collective and personal suffering has been made. The joyful news of a possible cure has been announced, and the detailed map for the journey has been unfurled before us. The Noble Eightfold Path is not an exotic or impossible ideal reserved for monks in caves. It is a practical guide for anyone, anywhere, who wishes to live with less suffering and more peace, with less confusion and more clarity. It is a path that begins, as all great journeys do, with a single crucial first step. That first step is the very foundation of the entire structure, the lens that brings everything else into focus. It is the cultivation of wisdom through right understanding. We stand now at the beginning of the path itself, the Noble Eightfold Path, the practical and profound prescription for the end of suffering. We have received the diagnosis and the promise of a cure, and now we hold the map in our hands. Like any great journey into unknown territory, the first and most critical step is to get our bearings, to understand the landscape, and to point ourselves in the right direction. Without a clear sense of direction, all our energy and effort could be wasted, leading us deeper into the wilderness rather than out of it. This essential first step, the compass for the entire journey of awakening, is the first factor of the path. Right understanding, or in the Pali language, Samma Ditthi. It is the very foundation of wisdom upon which all else is built. Right understanding is often translated as right view. It is the work of clearing away the fog of our misconceptions so that we can see the nature of reality as it truly is, not as we wish it to be or as we have been conditioned to see it. It is a lens, cleaned and polished, through which the world and our own minds are brought into sharp, luminous focus. This understanding operates on two distinct, yet interconnected, levels. The first level is conceptual, and the second is experiential. The first level, the mundane or conceptual right understanding, is to grasp the teachings with our intellect. It is to study the map. This means understanding the core principles we have already explored. It is the understanding that there is suffering and dissatisfaction, dukkha, woven into the fabric of our unexamined lives. It is the understanding that this suffering has a clear cause, our own craving and clinging, our tanha. It is the understanding that an end to this suffering is possible, the state of peace and freedom, known as nirodha. And it is the understanding that there is a practical path to reach that end, the very eightfold path we are now embarking upon. This conceptual understanding is absolutely essential. It provides the framework, the intellectual clarity needed to give our spiritual practice direction and purpose. Without it, our efforts can be aimless and confused. But the Buddha taught that this intellectual knowledge, while necessary, is not enough to truly liberate us. A person can be an expert on the chemical composition of water and still die of thirst. A medical student can memorize every textbook on surgery, but be unable to perform an operation. The second, deeper level of right understanding is experiential and transformative. It is to move from studying the map to walking the territory. It is the direct, intuitive, penetrating insight that arises from the sustained practice of mindfulness, concentration, and ethical living. It is the difference between reading that fire is hot and feeling its heat on your skin. It is the moment when the idea of impermanence, Anicca, ceases to be a word and becomes a felt reality as you watch a thought dissolve in your mind. It is the moment when the doctrine of no self, Anatta, moves from a bizarre philosophical concept to a direct insight as you search for a solid I within your experience and find only flowing, interconnected processes. This experiential insight is what truly cuts through the roots of our suffering. The entire eightfold path is a system designed to guide us from the first level of understanding to this second, liberating one. A cornerstone of right understanding at both levels is a clear grasp of the law of karma or karma. In the West, this concept is often misunderstood as a system of cosmic justice or inescapable fate. But the Buddhist understanding of karma is far more subtle, psychological, and empowering. Karma simply means action. The Buddha's revolutionary insight was that the most important quality of any action is the intention behind it. It is our volition, the will behind what we do, say, and think that plants a seed in the mind. Actions motivated by wholesome roots be intentions of generosity, kindness, and wisdom will inevitably lead to positive, peaceful, and happy results for ourselves and others. Actions motivated by unwholesome roots-be intentions of greed, hatred, and delusion will inevitably lead to negative, painful, and discordant results. This is not a system of reward and punishment from an external God. It is a natural law of the universe, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. If you plant an apple seed, you will get an apple tree. You will not get a mango. It is simply the nature of things. Seen in this light, the law of karma is not a fatalistic doctrine. It is a radical declaration of our own power and responsibility. While we are the inheritors of the results of our past actions, we are the absolute masters of our present actions. In every moment, we stand at a creative juncture. With every thought, every word, every deed, we are planting the seeds for our own future happiness or suffering. We are not puppets of fate. We are the architects of our own lives. This understanding gives us the courage and motivation to take our lives into our own hands, to consciously choose actions that lead to peace and to abandon those that lead to pain. To fully appreciate what right understanding is, it is helpful to contrast it with what it is not. The Buddha spoke of a thicket of wrong views that ensnare the mind, leading it into confusion and distress. One such wrong view is that of nihilism, the belief that our actions have no consequences and that life is ultimately meaningless. This view destroys all motivation for ethical conduct. If nothing matters, then kindness and cruelty are equivalent. Right understanding, with its clear seeing of karma, is the direct antidote to this paralyzing view. Another wrong view is eternalism, the belief in a fixed, unchanging, permanent soul or self that exists independently of the body and mind. This view leads to endless anxiety about what will happen to this self and to a fierce clinging to identity. Right understanding, with its insight into Anatta, or no self, frees us from this burden, allowing us to see ourselves not as a static noun, but as a dynamic verb. There is a classic Indian parable that perfectly illustrates the danger of these partial, wrong views. The story tells of a group of blind men who come across an elephant for the first time. The first man touches the elephant's thick, sturdy leg and declares, "An elephant is like a great pillar." The second man grasps the swinging tail and proclaims, "No, an elephant is like a rope." A third man touches the broad, smooth ear and says, "You are both wrong. An elephant is like a large fan." Another feels the long, sharp tusk and insists it is like a spear, and so they fall into a furious argument, each one absolutely certain of his own experience, and each one completely wrong. None of them has right understanding, because none of them perceives the whole elephant. They are trapped by their limited, partial perspective. The Eightfold Path is the method that allows us to step back, to open our eyes, and to see the elephant in its entirety. Right understanding is this holistic seeing. It is the clear, unwavering vision that gives context and meaning to every other step of the path. It is the North Star that guides our journey. It is the profound realization that our suffering is not random, that it has a cause we can understand, an end we can reach, and a path we can follow. It is the empowering knowledge that our actions matter, that our intentions shape our reality. It is the liberating insight that we are not trapped by a fixed self, but are flowing, changing processes with an infinite capacity for growth and awakening. With this clear view established, with our compass now pointing true north, the next logical step on our journey becomes obvious. If our intentions are the seeds of our future, and if our goal is to find true peace, then we must learn to consciously cultivate the right kind of intentions. We must learn to direct the mind away from thoughts of harm and towards thoughts of healing. We must align our inner world with the wisdom we have begun to uncover. And so, the path leads us directly from the clarity of right understanding to the cultivation of its close companion, the second factor of the path, right thought. Having established our bearings with right understanding, we have the map and the compass for our journey. We see the landscape of reality more clearly, understanding the nature of our dissatisfaction, its causes, and the possibility of freedom. Now, we must make a conscious choice about how we will travel through this landscape. It is not enough to simply see the path. We must intend to walk it. This brings us to the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, the close companion and direct expression of wisdom, right thought, or Samma Sankappa. This is often translated as right intention, right resolve, or right motivation, and it points to the immense power that lies in the quality of our inner world. If right understanding is the seeing eye, right thought is the directing hand. It is the rudder that steers the ship of our being. Before we speak a single word, before we perform a single action, a thought, an intention flashes through the mind. This inner world of thought is the workshop where our future is forged. The ancient Buddhist text, the Dhammapada, begins with this very premise. Mind is the forerunner of all things. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him, as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves. Right thought, then, is the art and science of purifying our mind at its very source. The Buddha, with his characteristic clarity, did not leave this as a vague instruction to think positive. He specified 3 distinct categories of right thought that we are to cultivate, and 3 corresponding categories of wrong thought that we are to abandon. The first category of right thought is the thought of renunciation. For the modern ear, renunciation can be an intimidating word, conjuring images of deprivation and self-denial. But in this context, its meaning is far more subtle and liberating. It means the intention to let go. It is the conscious resolve to release our tight-fisted, anxious grip on the things we know through right understanding, are impermanent and ultimately unsatisfying. It is the intention to renounce our addiction to sensory pleasure, our obsession with gaining wealth and status, and our desperate clinging to the ego. This is not about rejecting the world, but about finding our freedom within it. It's the wisdom to understand that chasing after fleeting pleasures is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. It only makes the thirst stronger. The thought of renunciation is the choice to trade the low-grade, frantic anxiety of constant wanting for the deep, abiding peace of contentment. It is the simple, powerful intention to find happiness within, rather than endlessly seeking it without. The corresponding wrong thoughts to be abandoned are thoughts of sensual desire and craving. It is the mind that is constantly restless, scheming for the next acquisition, the next experience, the next validation. By cultivating the intention of renunciation, we loosen the chains of this obsessive wanting. The second category of right thought is the thought of loving kindness or goodwill. The Pali word is abhyapada, which literally means non-ill will. This is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of anger, resentment, hostility, and hatred. It is the active, conscious intention to wish for the genuine happiness and well-being of all living beings, without exception. This includes our friends, neutral people, our enemies, and, just as importantly, ourselves. This practice is not about forcing an artificial feeling of liking someone who has harmed us. It is a choice of intention. The habitual, untrained mind reacts to harm with thoughts of revenge, resentment that can smolder for days, or cold indifference. These thoughts are a poison we drink, hoping the other person will suffer. The practice of right thought is to recognize these toxic patterns and consciously replace them with an intention of goodwill. We might reflect, this person's actions came from their own pain and confusion. May they be free from that suffering. May they find peace. This intention does not condone their harmful action, but it frees us from the self-inflicted torment of our own anger. It is an act of profound self-care, softening the heart and protecting the mind. The third category of right thought is the thought of non-harming or compassion. The Pali word is avihimsa, a term that means gentleness and the absence of cruelty. This is the intention to not cause suffering. It is the active wish that all beings be free from their pain. While loving kindness is focused on the happiness of others, compassion is focused on their suffering. It is the heart's trembling response to the pain of the world. This thought of non-harming extends far beyond the obvious physical acts of violence. It means abandoning thoughts that are subtly cruel, thoughts that take pleasure in the misfortune of others, thoughts that are judgmental and condemning. It is the cultivation of a fundamental gentleness in our inner world. This intention becomes the very bedrock of all ethical conduct. When the mind is suffused with the intention of non-harm, it becomes almost impossible to speak words that wound or to perform actions that cause pain. A beautiful way to visualize the practice of right thought is to see your mind as a garden. An untended mind is like an overgrown garden, choked with the weeds of greed, hatred, and delusion. These weeds grow effortlessly, strangling the life out of any beautiful flowers that might try to emerge. The practice of right thought is the patient, diligent work of a mindful gardener. First, through mindfulness, we learn to recognize the weeds. We see a thought of jealousy arise. We see a thought of resentment take root. We simply note it. Ah, a weed. We don't have to judge ourselves for it. We simply recognize it for what it is, an unwholesome thought that will cause suffering if allowed to flourish. The first step of our gardening is to gently, without violence, uproot this weed, to not water it with our attention and energy. Then, we consciously plant the seeds of wholesome thoughts. We intentionally introduce thoughts of gratitude, of generosity, of forgiveness. We systematically water these seeds by dwelling on them, returning to them, and savoring them. We can set aside time to practice loving-kindness meditation, actively sending wishes for well-being out into the world. Over time, as we continue this mindful gardening, a transformation occurs. The wholesome plants, the flowers of kindness and clarity, become stronger and more vibrant. They begin to naturally crowd out the weeds. The garden of the mind, once a chaotic and tangled wilderness, becomes a place of beauty, peace, and nourishment. There is a timeless story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that perfectly captures this principle. An elder is teaching his grandchild, saying, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One is evil, he is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, and ego. The other is good, he is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth." The grandchild thinks about it for a minute and then asks his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man simply replies, "The one you feed." This is the essence of right thought. Our thoughts are not random occurrences. They are habits we have fed over a lifetime. The path of right thought is the conscious, moment-by-moment decision to stop feeding the wolf of hatred and to start nourishing the wolf of peace. This is not a passive practice. It is an active and courageous engagement with our own mind. It is about catching the automatic, negative thoughts that so often lead to anxiety and depression. A mistake is made, and the habitual thought is, "I am such a failure." With right thought, we can intercept this. We can recognize it as an unskillful thought rooted in delusion and replace it with a thought of compassion. I made a mistake, as all humans do. What can I learn from this? May I be kind to myself in this moment? This single shift can be the difference between a spiral into despair and a moment of gentle self-acceptance. As we cultivate a mind filled with intentions of letting go, of goodwill, and of compassion, something remarkable begins to happen. The inner landscape begins to purify. And when the source is pure, what flows from it is inevitably pure. Our thoughts are the hidden architects of our words. A mind filled with anger will struggle to produce words of peace. A mind cultivated in kindness will find it natural to speak with grace. The beautiful, silent work we do in the garden of our own mind prepares the soil for the next step on our path, the way we manifest our inner world into the outer world. Thus, the current of the path flows naturally and logically from right thought into the realm of our communication. As we continue our journey along the noble eightfold path, we move from the inner world of our mind to its first and most immediate expression, in the outer world, our speech. The silent, powerful work of cultivating right understanding and right thought now seeks an outlet. Our thoughts, like water building behind a dam, inevitably flow outwards, and their primary channel is the words we use. Speech is thought made audible. It is the bridge between our private intentions and our shared reality. And this bridge is incredibly powerful. With words, we can declare war or offer peace. We can build a reputation or destroy one. We can inspire a person to their greatest heights or crush their spirit with a single careless phrase. Because speech has this immense power to create suffering or to create harmony, the practice of purifying it is the third step on the path. Right speech, or samavaka. Right speech is the first of the three factors that make up the training in ethical conduct, or sila. It is the practice of bringing mindfulness and compassion to our communication. It is a recognition that our words are not just fleeting sounds, but potent actions that have real, tangible consequences. In our modern world, a world saturated with noise, with endless online commentary, 24-hour news cycles, and the constant pressure to have an opinion, the practice of right speech is more vital than ever. The Buddha did not offer vague advice on this matter. He laid out a very clear and practical guide, defining right speech by what we must abstain from, and by extension, what we must cultivate. This guide consists of 4 main principles. The first principle is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling lies, but its scope is much broader. It means abstaining from any form of deception. This includes exaggeration to make a story more impressive, white lies told for convenience, making promises we have no intention of keeping, and misleading others through omission. The practice of abstaining from false speech is a commitment to radical truthfulness and integrity. Why is this so important? Because lying is inherently stressful. It creates a complicated, false reality that we must then struggle to maintain, remembering which lie we told to which person. It corrodes trust, the very foundation of all healthy relationships. When we commit to speaking the truth, our lives become incredibly simple. There is only one version of events to remember: what actually happened. Our inner world and our outer world become aligned. We become a person of integrity, someone whose word can be trusted. And this creates a profound sense of inner peace and self-respect. The second principle is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is speech that is intended to set one person against another. It is the poison of gossip, backbiting, and spreading rumors. It is the act of speaking ill of someone who is not present, carrying tales from one person to another to create discord. This kind of speech is a weapon that destroys harmony in families, workplaces, and communities. It creates an atmosphere of suspicion and fear where no one feels safe. The positive practice that replaces it is to speak in ways that promote unity and reconciliation. It means that when we speak of others, we focus on their good qualities. It means that if we see conflict, we use our words not to fan the flames, but to build bridges of understanding. It is to value harmony above the cheap thrill of gossip. It is to become a force for unity in a world that is so often fractured. The third principle is to abstain from harsh speech. This is any speech intended to cause pain. It is the verbal equivalent of a physical assault. It includes obvious things like yelling, insulting, name-calling, and cursing at someone. But it also includes more subtle forms of violence: biting sarcasm, condescending remarks, belittling humor, and needlessly cruel criticism. Harsh speech never solves anything. It only creates resentment, defensiveness, and fear. It closes down the heart of the listener and makes genuine communication impossible. The positive practice is to cultivate speech that is gentle, kind, and affectionate. It means choosing our words carefully so they are, as the Buddha said, pleasing to the ear and endearing. It means that even when we must offer criticism or express disagreement, we do so constructively, with a tone of respect and a clear intention to help, not to hurt. It is to make our speech a safe haven for others, not a battlefield. The fourth and final principle is to abstain from idle chatter. This is speech that is aimless, pointless, and frivolous. It is talking for the sake of talking, filling every silence with noise, engaging in endless speculation, and distracting ourselves and others with meaningless gossip. In a world that glorifies information, this principle can seem strange, but it is deeply wise. Idle chatter scatters the mind, making concentration and inner peace impossible. It exhausts our mental energy and wastes our most precious resource, our time and attention. The positive practice is to cultivate speech that is meaningful, purposeful, and beneficial. It means asking ourselves if what we are about to say has any real value. This doesn't mean we must always be somber and serious. Light-hearted and joyful speech can be incredibly beneficial, but it means our communication is intentional. The highest form of this practice is the cultivation of what is known as noble silence. This is not an awkward or empty silence, but a rich, potent, and mindful presence. In a world of overwhelming noise, choosing silence can be a radical act of self-care. It allows the mind to rest and recharge. It creates the space necessary for deep listening, so that when others speak, we are not just waiting for our turn to talk, but are truly receiving their words. Noble silence is also a great protector. How often have we said something foolish or hurtful out of sheer impulse. A moment of mindful silence can prevent a lifetime of regret. To make this practice even more tangible, we can use a set of 5 gatekeeping questions, a mindful filter through which we can pass our intended speech before we utter it. Before you speak, ask yourself, first, is it true? Second, is it kind? Third, is it beneficial or useful? Fourth, is it necessary? And fifth, is this the right time to say it? A statement might be true, but if it is not kind, perhaps it should not be said. It might be true and kind, but if it is not beneficial, it may just be idle chatter. And it might be true, kind, and beneficial, but if spoken at the wrong time, it can still cause great harm. This mindful filter can transform our communication from a source of conflict into a practice of wisdom and compassion. There is a simple story that illustrates the karmic echo of our words. A man who was full of anger towards the world went to a mountain valley and shouted into the emptiness, "You are a fool. I hate you." A moment later, the echo returned his words precisely. "You are a fool. I hate you." The man was enraged, believing someone was mocking him, and he shouted more insults, which were all faithfully returned. His young son, seeing his father's distress, said, "Father, try something different." The man, calming himself slightly, shouted, "You are wonderful. I love you." The valley immediately echoed back, "You are wonderful. I love you." Our life is often this valley. The social and emotional world we inhabit is frequently an echo of the words we ourselves have put into it. If we find ourselves surrounded by anger, criticism, and discord, it is wise to first examine the quality of our own speech. Right speech is the art of making our communication a conscious act of kindness and a tool for connection. It is the understanding that every word we speak is a seed, and we will surely live in the garden that grows from those seeds. As we bring this mindfulness to our words, purifying our communication, the path naturally guides us to examine the next way we interact with the world through our physical behavior. The same wholesome intentions that now shape our thoughts and our words must be extended to our deeds. And so, the current of the path flows onward from what we say to what we do, leading us to the practice of right action. Having brought mindful intention to the inner world of our thoughts and the expressive world of our speech, the path now guides us to the most tangible and consequential domain of our lives, our physical actions. If thought is the seed and speech is the blossom, then action is the fruit. It is the full commitment of our being, the way our intentions ultimately impact the world. It is through our actions that we create our most powerful karmic ripples, for good or for ill. This practice of embodying our wisdom and compassion in our physical conduct is the fourth factor of the path and the second pillar of ethical training. Right action, or samma kammanta. Right action asks us to consider a profound question: is my physical presence on this earth a source of safety, peace, and well-being for other beings? Or is it a source of fear, harm, and suffering? It is the practice of aligning what we do with what we understand to be true and wholesome. Like right speech, the Buddha defined right action with crystalline clarity, focusing on 3 fundamental areas of conduct to abstain from, which in turn illuminate the positive virtues we are to cultivate. The first principle of right action is to abstain from taking life. The Pali term, panatipata, refers to the destruction of breathing beings. At its most fundamental level, this is a commitment to not intentionally kill another human being. It is the foundation of any civilized society and the most basic expression of respect for others. But the principle, rooted in a deep compassion born from right understanding, extends far beyond this. It encourages a reverence for all life, It invites us to consider our relationship with the animal world, recognizing that these beings, like us, seek to avoid pain and cling to life. For many who walk this path, this principle leads to the personal choice of vegetarianism or veganism, seeing it as the most direct way to withdraw their participation from systems that cause widespread suffering to animals. The core of this precept is not a rigid dietary law, but the cultivation of a heart that wishes no harm, a presence that is non-violent to its core. It also means refraining from striking others, from committing acts of violence, and from asking or encouraging others to kill on our behalf. It is the deep and abiding intention to be a protector of life, not a destroyer of it. The second principle is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the precept against stealing. It is the simple and profound respect for the property and belongings of others. It means we do not take what is not freely offered to us. In our complex modern world, however, the expression of this principle goes far beyond simple theft. It invites a deep inquiry into our own honesty and fairness. It means refraining from intellectual property theft, such as pirating software or media. It means being honest in our business dealings, not exploiting customers or employees. It means not evading taxes or cheating on expenses. On a more subtle level, it means not taking credit for another person's work, or even not wasting our employer's time. At its heart, this precept is about cultivating a mind of contentment and generosity. A mind that does not steal is a mind that is not possessed by the fever of wanting what others have. It is a mind that finds joy in giving rather than taking, and it is therefore a mind that is fundamentally at peace, free from the anxiety and guilt that always accompany dishonesty. The third principle of right action is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is perhaps the most misinterpreted of the precepts, often seen through a lens of puritanical fear. But the Buddha's focus was, as always, on the prevention of suffering. This principle is not about condemning sexuality itself, but about guiding our powerful sexual energy in a way that is rooted in kindness, respect, and non-harming. Sexual misconduct refers to any sexual act that causes suffering through exploitation, coercion, or deception. It means refraining from any act that is not based on mutual, enthusiastic consent. It means avoiding infidelity, recognizing the deep pain and betrayal that breaking such commitments causes to a partner and family. It is about refusing to use another person as a mere object for our own gratification, but instead honoring them as a complete being, deserving of respect. Right action in our sexual lives means cultivating relationships based on honesty, trust, and genuine care. It is about ensuring that this powerful and intimate part of human experience becomes a source of joyful connection, not a source of trauma, pain, or regret. These three principles, abstaining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, form the foundation of ethical action. But the spirit of right action, which is the spirit of non-harming, invites us to expand our ethical awareness into every corner of our modern lives. It asks us to consider the consequences of our actions in a globally interconnected world. Our simple act of buying a product might support a system that relies on child labor or destroys rainforests. Right action, therefore, encourages the practice of conscious consumerism, of investigating the supply chains behind what we buy, and making choices that align with our values. It also extends to our environmental responsibility. Harming our planet, polluting its waters, destroying its forests, changing its climates, a colossal act of harm against all future generations and countless species. Right action calls us to live more simply, to reduce our consumption, and to be advocates for the health of our shared home. It is crucial to understand that right action is not merely about following a set of external rules. A person could follow these rules perfectly out of fear of punishment or desire for a good reputation, but their heart could still be filled with resentment. True right action arises spontaneously from a mind that has been cultivated by the other factors of the path. It is the natural expression of a heart filled with the compassion of right thought and a mind illuminated by the wisdom of right understanding. We refrain from harming not because we are told to, but because we have seen our deep interconnectedness with all beings and genuinely wish for their well-being. Our ethical conduct becomes a joyful expression of our inner transformation, not a restrictive burden. There is no more powerful story about the transformative potential of right action than that of Angulimala. He was a feared serial killer who roamed the forests, murdering travelers and collecting their fingers for a gruesome garland, his name literally meaning finger garland. One day, the Buddha walked calmly into his forest. Angulimala, seeing his next victim, ran after him, sword drawn. But a strange thing happened. Though he ran with all his might, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who was only walking. Exhausted and confused, he shouted, "Stop! Monk, stop!" The Buddha, still walking, turned and replied with a calm, powerful voice, "Angulimala, I have stopped. It is you who have not stopped." The words struck Angulimala like lightning. He understood at once that the Buddha had stopped the wheel of violence and hatred, while he himself was still endlessly running on it. In that moment, his world shattered. He threw down his sword, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. He was accepted into the order and dedicated himself to the path. Though his past karma was heavy, and he was often met with fear and violence from the families of his victims, he endured it all with unwavering patience. Through his profound commitment to a new way of life, a life of complete non-harming, he purified his mind and eventually became a fully awakened arhat, a being of profound peace and compassion. This story is a beacon of radical hope. It teaches us that no matter how unskillful our past actions have been, the present moment always offers the possibility of change. We are not defined forever by our mistakes. By consciously choosing right action, by committing to a path of non-harming in what we do, we hold the power to completely transform our lives and our destiny. This commitment to embody our intentions in our deeds is a cornerstone of a life of integrity. For most of us, in the modern world, the vast majority of our daily actions take place within the context of our work. The way we spend our days, the way we earn our money, is a domain with immense ethical implications. It is a primary way we impact society. Therefore, the path provides specific guidance for this crucial area of our lives, extending the principles of ethical conduct into our careers. This leads us directly to the third and final jewel of the training in Sila, the practice of right livelihood. We have now explored the vital practices of right speech and right action, learning to align our words and our deeds with the compassionate wisdom of the path. The current of our practice now flows into the third and final aspect of ethical training, or Sila. This is the realm where our actions are most concentrated, the domain where we spend the vast majority of our waking hours and expend the greatest amount of our life's energy, our work. The way we earn a living is not separate from our spiritual life. It is a central expression of it. To bring our professional life into harmony with our deepest values is the aim of the fifth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right livelihood, or Samma Ajiva. Right livelihood is the practice of earning a living in a way that is honest, honorable, and, most importantly, harmless. It asks us to ensure that the activities we perform to sustain our own life do not cause suffering to the lives of others. The Buddha understood that if our work requires us to constantly violate our core ethical principles, it becomes a major obstacle to finding peace. A mind cannot be calm and clear if it is knowingly profiting from the pain of others. Therefore, he offered clear guidance, identifying 5 specific types of livelihood that are to be avoided because they are fundamentally rooted in causing harm. The first is business in weapons. This means refraining from the design, manufacture, or sale of arms. To profit from conflict, to make a living from the tools of violence and death, is in direct opposition to the principle of non-harming. The second is business in living beings. In the Buddha's time, this referred primarily to the slave trade and prostitution, but it also includes the raising of animals for slaughter. It is any commerce that treats conscious, breathing beings as mere commodities to be bought and sold, exploited for labor or pleasure. The third is business in meat. This is the production and trade of the flesh of slaughtered animals. It is a livelihood that is directly and inextricably linked to the act of taking life, violating the first principle of right action. The fourth livelihood to be avoided is business in intoxicants. This refers to making a living from the production or sale of substances like alcohol and recreational drugs, which cloud the mind, lead to heedlessness, and are the cause of immense personal and societal suffering. A path that aims to cultivate clarity and mindfulness cannot be sustained by a profession that promotes the opposite. The fifth and final category is business in poisons, meaning any trade in substances that are specifically designed to harm or to kill. This ancient list provides a powerful ethical foundation. The underlying principle is clear. Any work that requires one to break the precepts of right action or right speech is not right livelihood. However, for most of us living in the 21st century, our professional choices are rarely so black and white. The global economy is a complex, interconnected web, and it can be difficult to find a role that is entirely free from causing any harm. What about working for a large corporation that produces life-saving medicine, but also has a poor environmental record? What about working in marketing, a field that can sometimes fuel the very craving we are trying to overcome? Right livelihood is not about finding a perfectly pure job, which may be impossible. It is a practice of bringing deep, honest inquiry to our professional lives. It invites us to hold our work up to the light of our conscience and ask difficult questions. On balance, does my work contribute more benefit or more harm to the world? Does it require me to lie, to deceive, or to act against my ethical principles? Does it support systems of exploitation or injustice? Does it leave me feeling drained and compromised? Or does it allow me to maintain my integrity? The path is not one of perfectionism or judgment, but of intention and direction. We can think of livelihoods on a spectrum. On one end are the clearly harmful professions. On the other end are clearly beneficial ones, such as those in healing, teaching, caregiving, or charitable work. Most jobs fall somewhere in the vast middle ground. The practice of right livelihood is to be aware of where we are on that spectrum, and to consciously, whenever possible, move ourselves in the direction of greater benefit and less harm. It may mean choosing a more ethical employer, shifting to a different department within a company, or simply refusing to cut corners or engage in dishonest practices within our current role. Crucially, even if we are in a situation where we cannot easily change our job, we always retain the power to change our attitude towards it. This is where right livelihood becomes a profound inner practice. Any work, no matter how humble or seemingly mundane, can be transformed into a rich training ground for the spiritual path. The workplace can become our monastery, our laboratory for practice. A difficult and demanding boss becomes a teacher of patience. A frustrating customer provides an opportunity to practice right speech, responding with kindness when our habit is to react with anger. The stress of a deadline becomes a chance to practice mindfulness of the body and breath. A repetitive, boring task becomes a powerful exercise in concentration and right effort. The daily interactions with colleagues are a constant field for cultivating generosity, honesty, and goodwill. We can fundamentally shift our motivation for work. The conventional motivation is to answer the question, what can I get? We seek a salary, status, recognition, and power. A practitioner of right livelihood begins to ask a different question. How can I serve? This transforms everything. A person making coffee is no longer just earning a wage. They are offering a moment of warmth and comfort to another human being. A person cleaning an office is no longer just performing a menial task. They are creating an environment of order and well-being for others to work in. When we approach our work with an attitude of service and mindfulness, it ceases to be a burden and becomes a source of meaning and dignity. There is a beautiful story that illustrates how the nobility of our livelihood comes not from its status, but from the quality of our heart. Towards the end of his long life, the Buddha was traveling through a small village when he was approached by a humble blacksmith named Chunda. Chunda, filled with devotion, invited the Buddha and his monks for a meal, the traditional way of showing respect. He was not a king or a wealthy patron. He was a simple tradesman, but he prepared the best food he could offer with a heart full of generosity and reverence. As it happened, this would be the Buddha's final meal before he passed into his final nirvana. Later, the Buddha told his attendant, Ananda, that of all the meals he had been offered in his entire life, 2 were of the greatest merit: the meal he ate just before his enlightenment, and this final meal, offered by Chunda, the smith. This story is a powerful reminder that the purity of our intention is what truly matters. Chunda's humble livelihood was sanctified by his generosity and sincerity, making his simple offering as valuable as one from a king. With the practice of right livelihood, we complete the threefold training in Sila, or ethical conduct. We have now established a firm foundation of living in the world in a way that is harmless, honest, and helpful. We have aligned our speech, our actions, and our work with our wisest intentions. This ethical foundation is absolutely essential, for it creates a life free from the inner turmoil of regret and guilt, which is a prerequisite for deeper states of peace. But as anyone who has ever tried to break a bad habit knows, a good foundation and noble intentions are not always enough to keep us on the path. We need the energy, the discipline, and the resilience to work with the mind's ingrained tendencies. We must now turn our attention from the outer world of our conduct to the inner world of the mind itself, to develop the strength and stability required for the journey. This brings us to the next great division of the path, the training in mental discipline, which begins with the engine that drives all progress, the practice of right effort. Having established the firm, ethical foundation of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we have created a life of integrity, a life that is, on the whole, harmless. This training in Sila, or ethical conduct, is like preparing a plot of land for cultivation. We have cleared the rocks and the major thorns, creating the external conditions for peace to grow. But a cleared field, if left untended, will soon be overrun with weeds once more. The real work of transformation now moves from the outer world of our conduct to the inner world of our own mind. This begins the next great division of the path, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. And the engine that powers this entire inner journey the energy that turns passive intention into active cultivation, is the sixth factor of the path, right effort, or samavayama. The word effort in our modern culture is often fraught with tension. We associate it with striving, with pushing, with a kind of aggressive, white-knuckle determination that often leads to stress and burnout. Right effort is something entirely different. It is not a grim struggle, but a wise, balanced, and joyful application of energy. It is the quality of gentle persistence, like the steady flow of a river that effortlessly carves its way through stone. It is the skillful and compassionate energy we bring to the garden of our mind. To guide this effort, the Buddha laid out a beautifully simple and comprehensive strategy known as the Four Great Efforts. This is the art of mindful mental horticulture. The first of these is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the proactive, protective aspect of the practice. It is like putting a fence around our newly prepared garden to keep out hungry animals. It means cultivating a wise guardianship over our senses. We begin to recognize that certain inputs, certain situations, and certain kinds of content reliably trigger unwholesome states within us. Perhaps mindlessly scrolling through a particular social media feed consistently stirs up feelings of envy and inadequacy. Perhaps listening to angry, divisive talk radio always agitates the mind and fosters resentment. The effort here is not to suppress these feelings once they arise, but to wisely and gently steer away from the obvious triggers when we can. It is not about hiding from the world, but about no longer unconsciously feeding our own suffering. It is the wisdom to know which wells are poisoned and to choose to drink from cleaner water. The second is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts to guard the senses, weeds will inevitably sprout in the garden. A thought of anger towards a loved one, a wave of greed, a cloud of anxiety. These are old, deep-rooted habits. The untrained reaction is either to indulge the thought, watering the weed by replaying the story over and over, or to violently suppress it, trying to force it out of the mind, which often only makes it stronger. Right effort offers a middle way. Through mindfulness, we notice the unwholesome state has arisen. We see the weed. The effort here is to gently, but firmly, withdraw our attention from it. We let go of the storyline. We relax the tension in the body that accompanies the emotion. We turn our attention to something more wholesome, like the physical sensation of the breath. We are not fighting the weed, which would give it energy. We are simply starving it of the water and sunlight of our attention. Over time, deprived of nourishment, its power withers. The third great effort is to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the joyful act of planting new seeds in our garden. It is the conscious decision to introduce and develop qualities of goodness, clarity, and peace. We might make the effort to read an inspiring book, to listen to a wise talk, or to reflect on the virtues of patience and generosity. We might actively decide to perform an act of kindness for someone, no matter how small. This is the practice of metta, or loving kindness meditation, where we intentionally plant and water the seeds of goodwill for ourselves and all other beings. It is a recognition that the mind can be trained, that we don't have to be passive victims of our moods. We can actively introduce beauty and light into our own inner landscape. The fourth and final effort is to maintain and nurture the wholesome states that have already arisen. When a beautiful flower blooms in our garden, we don't just ignore it. We appreciate it. We care for it. We allow its fragrance to permeate the air. Similarly, when a moment of genuine peace, a feeling of selfless joy, or a wave of compassion arises in the mind, we should not let it pass by unnoticed. The effort here is to recognize it and savor it. We can pause and acknowledge, This is a moment of peace. This feels good. We can reflect on the causes and conditions that brought it about. By consciously appreciating and dwelling in these wholesome states, we strengthen them. They become more familiar, more accessible, and over time, they can become the new, default habitat of the mind. Underlying all four of these efforts is a crucial understanding of balance. Right effort avoids two extremes. The first is the extreme of laxity and laziness. This is the mind that knows what it should do but says, "I'll do it later," or "It's too hard." It is the state of sloth and torpor that allows the garden to become completely overgrown with weeds through sheer neglect. The other extreme is equally unskillful, the extreme of tense, anxious striving. This is the ambitious, ego-driven effort that is harsh on oneself, impatient, and constantly measuring progress. This kind of aggressive effort creates tension and restlessness, which are major obstacles to peace. The most famous teaching on this subject is the story of Sona Kolovisa. Sona was a monk who was fiercely dedicated, practicing walking meditation with such relentless intensity that the path became stained with the blood from his cracked feet. Yet, despite his heroic effort, he felt he was making no progress and became deeply discouraged, even considering leaving the monastic life. The Buddha, perceiving his state of mind, went to him and asked a simple question. "Sona," he said, "in your life as a layman, were you not skilled at playing the lute?" Sona replied that he was. The Buddha then asked, "Tell me, what happened when the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly?" Sona explained, "Venerable sir, the sound was sharp and unpleasant, and the strings were liable to break." "And what happened when the strings were too loose?" the Buddha inquired. "Then the sound was dull and indistinct. It made no music at all." "And when," the Buddha asked, "did the lute produce a beautiful and resonant sound?" Sona replied, "When the strings were tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose." The Buddha smiled. "In the very same way, Sona, effort that is overly strained leads to restlessness, and effort that is too slack leads to laziness. Tune the faculty of your energy to be just right and direct your mind to the goal." End of 10. This story is the heart of right effort. It is the middle way of energy. It is a practice of patience and persistence. Transformation does not happen overnight. The deeply ingrained habits of our mind were formed over a lifetime, and they will not yield to a few days of aggressive assault. They yield to the steady, gentle, and consistent application of wise effort, day after day. It is the courage to keep showing up for yourself, especially on the difficult days, with an attitude of kindness and gentle resolve. This wise, balanced energy is what animates our entire practice. It is the will to do the work, but this will needs a guide. This energy needs to be directed with precision. How do we know which states are wholesome and which are unwholesome in any given moment? How do we know when a weed has sprouted or when a flower has bloomed? To perform this delicate and skillful work of mental cultivation, we require a tool of extraordinary clarity. We need a form of awareness that can illuminate the present moment without judgment, allowing us to see what is actually happening in our minds, in our hearts, and in our bodies in real time. This essential tool, the very heart of Buddhist meditation and the seventh factor of the path, is the practice of right mindfulness. We have arrived at the very heart of the Noble Eightfold Path, the single factor that illuminates and empowers all the others. We have established an ethical way of life with Sila, and we have kindled the wise and balanced energy of right effort. But how do we direct that energy? How do we know what is happening in our minds from moment to moment, so that we can apply the four great efforts with skill and precision. The answer lies in the seventh factor, the cornerstone of all Buddhist meditation and the key to profound self-awareness, right mindfulness, or samasati. In a world that is constantly pulling our attention outwards towards screens, towards tasks, towards the past and the future, right mindfulness is a radical act of returning home. It is the simple, yet profound, practice of paying attention to our own life as it is unfolding, right here, right now. The most widely used definition describes it as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack those three elements. On purpose means it is an intentional act. We are choosing to direct our awareness. In the present moment means we are bringing our attention back from the endless wanderings of memory and fantasy to the only moment we ever truly have, which is this one. And non-judgmentally is perhaps the most crucial part. It means we observe what is happening without layering on our habitual commentary of good or bad, right or wrong, like or dislike. We simply allow things to be as they are. Before we explore what mindfulness is, it is helpful to clear away some common misconceptions about what it is not. Mindfulness is not about stopping our thoughts or trying to empty the mind. This is a common and frustrating goal for many beginners. The mind produces thoughts naturally. The goal of mindfulness is not to stop the river of thought, but to stop being swept away by it. It is to sit on the riverbank and watch the thoughts float by, without having to jump in and follow each one. Mindfulness is also not necessarily a state of deep relaxation or blissful trance. While calm and peace are often beautiful results of the practice, the process of being mindful can sometimes be uncomfortable. It means being present with everything, including our restlessness, our boredom, and our pain. It is a practice of courageous presence, not blissful escape. To provide a systematic way to train this capacity, the Buddha offered a comprehensive framework known as the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. This is a complete guide to exploring the entirety of our human experience. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. This is the primary anchor for our attention, the most tangible and accessible place to begin. The body is always in the present moment. We can't take our body into the past or the future. The most common practice here is mindfulness of breathing. We bring our awareness to the physical sensations of the breath as it enters and leaves the body, the coolness at the tip of the nostrils, the rising and falling of the abdomen. We are not thinking about the breath. We are feeling it directly. This foundation also includes awareness of our posture sitting, standing, walking, lying down, and bringing a gentle, curious attention to the myriad of physical sensations that are constantly occurring. By grounding our awareness in the body, we pull the mind back from its scattered wanderings and anchor it firmly in the here and now. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings. The Pali word is vedana, which refers not to complex emotions, but to the raw, immediate tone of any experience. Every moment can be categorized as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. When we taste something delicious, a pleasant feeling arises. When we hear a jarring noise, an unpleasant feeling arises. When we feel the sensation of our back against a chair, the feeling might be neutral. Usually, we react to these feelings instantly and unconsciously. We cling to the pleasant, push away the unpleasant, and ignore the neutral. This is the very mechanism of craving, or tanha. The practice of mindfulness of feelings is to simply note the feeling tone as it arises, without reacting. Ah, pleasant feeling. Ah, unpleasant feeling. We observe it as a fleeting energetic event in the body, watching it arise, persist for a moment, and pass away, just like the breath. This practice directly untangles our deep-seated habit of reactivity. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind, or consciousness. Here, we turn our awareness back upon the mind itself. We learn to recognize the weather of our inner world. We simply note, without judgment, the state of the mind. The mind is angry. The mind is scattered. The mind is calm. The mind is joyful. We are not identifying with the state. We are not saying, "I am angry." We are observing, with a clear and impartial interest, that the quality of anger is present in the mind at this moment. This practice is like a watchman at the city gates, who simply notes everyone who enters and leaves without getting involved in their stories. It cultivates a profound and intimate self-awareness, showing us how transient and impersonal our mental states truly are. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or dhammas. This is the most comprehensive aspect of the practice, where we learn to see our experience through the clarifying lens of the core teachings. We observe how our experience is made up of the 5 aggregates we explored earlier. We watch for the arising of the 5 hindrances to meditation, things like sensual desire, ill will, sloth, restlessness, and doubt, and we also notice when they are absent. Conversely, we notice the presence of the factors of enlightenment qualities like mindfulness itself, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, and concentration, and we learn how to cultivate them. This is mindfulness fully integrated with wisdom, the direct seeing of the path to liberation unfolding in our own experience. Perhaps the greatest gift of mindfulness is that it creates a space, a pause, between a stimulus and our habitual reaction to it. The Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Mindfulness is the practice of inhabiting and expanding that sacred space. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. The stimulus is the car swerving in front of you. The mindless habitual reaction is a surge of anger, a shouted curse, a blast of the horn. But with mindfulness, the sequence changes. You see the car. You feel the jolt of adrenaline in your body. You notice the tightening in your chest and the heat of anger rising. You see the thought, "What a jerk," form in your mind. And because you see all of this happening with a clear, non-judgmental awareness, you are no longer its prisoner. You are its witness. And in that space of witnessing, you have a choice. You can choose to take a deep breath. You can choose to soften the muscles in your shoulders. You can choose to recognize that the other driver might be rushing to an emergency. You are free. This is the shift from being a reactive automaton to a conscious, choiceful human being. It is helpful to remember the purpose of this powerful tool. The Buddha told a parable about a man who needed to cross a great, dangerous river to get to the safe shore on the other side. Seeing no boat, he diligently gathered wood, vines, and reeds, and built himself a sturdy raft. By means of the raft, he safely crossed to the other side. The Buddha then asked his monks, what should this wise man do with the raft? Should he, out of gratitude for its service, lift it onto his shoulders and carry it with him on his journey inland? No, venerable sir, the monks replied. He should pull it ashore or set it adrift and continue his journey unburdened. The Buddha explained that his teachings, the Dharma, are like this raft. They are supremely useful for a purpose, to get us from the shore of suffering to the shore of liberation. Mindfulness is a crucial part of this raft. We use it to cross the river, but it is a tool, a means to an end, not an end in itself. We should not cling to it dogmatically or build a new identity around it, such as, I am a great meditator. We simply use the tool to do the work with gratitude and skill. As we practice holding our attention steady in the present moment through mindfulness, the mind gradually becomes more settled and unified. The frantic, scattered energy of the monkey mind begins to calm down. Like a wild horse that has been gently and patiently trained, the mind becomes workable, pliable, and strong. This developing quality of a calm, stable, and unified consciousness is the natural result of sustained mindfulness. It is a state of deep power and peace, and it is the eighth and final factor of the path, the culmination of our mental training, right concentration. We have now arrived at the eighth and final factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the culmination of our journey through the trainings in wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. It is the beautiful and profound fruit that grows from the soil of a life lived with integrity and the patient cultivation of the mind. This final step is right concentration, or samma samadhi. It is the practice of unifying the mind, gathering its scattered energies into a single, steady, and luminous point, leading to states of profound stillness, clarity, and peace. It is essential to understand that right concentration is not something that can be forced or achieved in isolation. It is not the kind of strained, tense focus we associate with cramming for an exam or staring intently at a screen. That kind of concentration is tiring and often accompanied by stress. Right concentration, by contrast, is serene, joyful, and deeply restorative. It arises naturally when the other 7 factors of the path have been developed and are working in harmony. The ethical foundation of right speech, right action, and right livelihood creates a life free from remorse and guilt, which are major sources of mental restlessness. Right understanding provides the wisdom that gives our practice purpose. Right thought clears the mind of distracting intentions like ill will and craving. Right effort provides the gentle, balanced energy, and right mindfulness acts as the skillful gatekeeper, calming the initial franticness of the mind and preparing the ground for concentration to deepen. Imagine the mind is like the light of the sun. In its ordinary, scattered state, the sun's rays spread out over a vast area, providing warmth and a gentle light. But when those same rays are gathered and focused through a magnifying glass, they become a beam of immense power and intensity, capable of generating great heat and light. Right concentration is the practice of becoming this magnifying glass. It gathers the diffuse rays of our consciousness into a single, powerful, and unwavering beam. The most effective way to understand the process and result of right concentration is through the classic analogy of a muddy lake. Imagine a lake where the water has been completely stirred up. Wind, rain, and commotion have churned the mud and sediment from the bottom, making the water opaque and turbulent. You cannot see into its depths, and its surface is too agitated to clearly reflect the sky above. This is a perfect metaphor for the ordinary, untrained mind churned up by the winds of desire and aversion, clouded by the sediment of restlessness, doubt, and worry. What is the wisest way to clear this muddy water? You don't jump into the lake and try to physically push the mud down. This would only stir it up more. The only effective method is to stop the agitation. You protect the lake from the wind. You allow it to be still. The practice of right mindfulness on a single object, like the breath, is this very act of letting the mind settle. As we gently and repeatedly bring our attention back to the breath, we stop stirring the waters of the mind. And as the mind becomes still, the sediment, the mental hindrances of sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt naturally begins to settle to the bottom. When this settling occurs, the water of the lake becomes progressively clearer and more still. This is the state of samadhi, or concentration. And in this state, two wonderful things happen. First, the surface of the water becomes like a flawless mirror. It can now perfectly reflect the moon, the stars, and the trees on the shore with perfect fidelity. This is the peace and bliss of a concentrated mind. Second, the water becomes so transparent that you can now see deep into the lake's own nature. The fish swimming, the plants growing, the rocks on the bottom. This is the penetrating insight that a concentrated mind makes possible. Let us look at these two fruits of concentration. The first fruit, the peaceful reflection, is often called samatha, or tranquility. As the hindrances subside, they are replaced by factors of profound joy, pleasure, and peace. These states, known as the jhanas, or meditative absorptions, are a source of deep nourishment and healing for the mind. It is a happiness that is not dependent on any external object or sensory experience. It is a bliss born of seclusion from unwholesome states, a profound contentment that arises from within. This experience of deep inner peace shows us that it is possible to be happy and fulfilled without constantly seeking pleasure from the outside world. It provides a sanctuary, a refuge from the stresses and strains of daily life, and it gives us the strength and resilience to face life's challenges with greater equanimity. The second fruit, the ability to see into the depths, is vipassana, or insight. When the mind is concentrated, stable, and unified, its power of investigation is magnified 100-fold. It becomes a high-precision instrument, a powerful laser capable of seeing reality with unprecedented clarity. With this powerful, concentrated mind, we can now turn our attention back to our own experience, our body, our feelings, our thoughts, and see them for what they truly are. We can directly experience the truth of Anicca, impermanence, as we watch sensations and thoughts arise and vanish without a trace. We can directly see the truth of Dukkha, the subtle unsatisfactoriness of even pleasant experiences because of their fleeting nature. And we can directly investigate the truth of Anatta, no self, by searching for a permanent, solid I and finding only an impersonal, flowing process. This is not intellectual understanding. This is a direct, transformative insight that cuts through the root of delusion. These two qualities, samatha, calm, and vipassana, insight, are often described as the two wings of a bird. You need both to fly. A mind that cultivates deep calm without wisdom can become attached to the blissful states of concentration, mistaking them for the final goal. A mind that tries to cultivate insight without a stable base of calm will lack the power and precision to see deeply. It will be easily distracted and overwhelmed. Right concentration provides the stable, unwavering platform of samatha, from which the investigative light of vipassana can shine. The calm mind becomes the perfect laboratory for insight to arise. It is also why this factor is called right concentration. Concentration itself is a neutral tool. A sniper aiming at a target is highly concentrated. A cat stalking a mouse is highly concentrated. But this is not right concentration, because it is not guided by the rest of the path. It is motivated by an intention to harm or to acquire. Right concentration is a state of stillness, that is built upon a foundation of ethical conduct and guided by wise intention for the sole purpose of liberation from suffering. With right concentration, we have reached the summit of the path. We have journeyed from the foundational wisdom of right understanding through the purifying practices of ethical conduct to the profound mental cultivations of right effort, right mindfulness, and now, right concentration. The map has been fully explored. We have seen how each step supports and deepens the others, creating a complete and holistic system for human flourishing. We have moved from theory to a vision of deep, embodied practice. Having traversed the landscape of the path in its entirety, the question naturally shifts from, what is the path? To, how do I begin to walk it in a practical way? The journey ahead in our exploration will be to take these beautiful, profound principles and ground them in step-by-step practical instructions. We will now turn our attention to the specific techniques and practices that allow us to cultivate mindfulness and concentration in our daily lives, beginning with a simple, accessible guide to the practice of meditation for anyone who wishes to begin. We have now journeyed through the entire theoretical landscape of the Noble Eightfold Path. We have the map, the principles, and the profound understanding of why this path leads to the end of suffering. Now, we arrive at the pivotal moment where theory becomes embodied experience. We move from the what and the why to the fundamental how. How do we actually begin to train this wild, untamed mind? This section is a direct, practical, step-by-step guide to the foundational practice of Buddhist meditation, Anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing. This is the gentle art of taming the monkey mind. Let us first acknowledge the nature of this mind we are working with. The Buddha often compared the untrained mind to a monkey, swinging restlessly from branch to branch in a vast forest, never staying still for more than a moment. It swings from a memory of the past to a fantasy about the future, from a pleasant sensation to an anxious thought, from a sound in the room to a sudden itch. This is the normal, default state of our consciousness. It is not a personal failing or a sign that you are bad at meditation. It is simply the nature of an untrained mind. The practice of mindfulness of breathing is the kind, patient, and time-tested method for inviting this monkey to gently come down from the trees, to find a place of rest and stillness. Imagine you have found a beautiful, wild horse. If you simply tie it to a post with a rope, it will panic, it will pull, it will buck, it will fight against the rope, exhausting itself in a desperate struggle for freedom. In this analogy, the wild horse is your restless mind. The post is your object of meditation, the breath, and the rope is your mindfulness. The art of taming this horse is not to yank on the rope or beat the horse into submission. The art is to gently and patiently, again and again, guide the horse back to the post. Over time, with gentle persistence, the horse realizes the post is not a threat. It learns that stillness is possible, that this spot is a place of safety and rest. This is the spirit we must bring to our practice, not one of forceful control, but of gentle, patient, and persistent returning. First, we prepare the ground for our practice. Find a time and a place. It is best to choose a specific time each day, so it becomes a regular habit. First thing in the morning is often ideal, before the day's complexities have churned up the mind. But any time you can consistently commit to is the right time. Start small. 5 or 10 minutes is a perfect beginning. Consistency is far more important than duration. Find a quiet place where you are unlikely to be disturbed. Let your family or housemates know you need this time. Turn off your phone. This is a gift of stillness you are giving to yourself. Next, find your posture. The posture should embody a balance of dignity and relaxation, of alertness and ease. The most common posture is sitting on a cushion on the floor. If you choose this, you can sit in a simple cross-legged position. What's important is that your knees are ideally at the same level as, or lower than, your hips, which allows your spine to rise naturally without effort. You may need to sit on a higher cushion to achieve this. A perfectly accessible and excellent alternative is to sit upright on a chair. Sit away from the back of the chair, with your spine erect. Place your feet flat on the floor. In either position, let your hands rest comfortably in your lap, perhaps one cupped inside the other, or on your thighs. Your eyes can be gently closed, or if you find that makes you sleepy, you can leave them slightly open, with a soft, unfocused gaze directed towards the floor a few feet in front of you. Let your body be stable, alert, and relaxed. Now, the practice itself begins. Allow yourself to settle in. You might take 2 or 3 slightly deeper breaths, and on the exhalations, feel your body releasing any obvious tension. Feel the simple weight of your body on the cushion or the chair. Feel the points of contact with the floor. Now, gently bring your attention to the physical sensations of your own breathing. Your only task is to feel the breath. You don't need to control it, change it, or judge it. Simply let it be natural. Where do you feel the breath most clearly? For some, it is the cool sensation of the air entering the nostrils and the warm sensation as it leaves. For others, it is the subtle rising and falling of the chest. For many, it is the gentle expansion and contraction of the abdomen. Choose one of these spots to be your anchor point, your home base. Now, rest your attention there. Feel the entire journey of one in-breath. Feel the slight pause after the in-breath. Feel the entire journey of the out-breath. That is one cycle. Your only job for the next few minutes is to feel the next breath and the next. Inevitably, your mind will wander. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is not a sign you are doing it wrong. It is simply what minds do. It is the horse pulling on the rope. The moment you realize, oh, my mind has wandered into thinking about my to-do list, or I'm lost in a memory, that moment is a moment of pure gold. That moment of realizing you have been distracted is a moment of mindfulness. In that moment, the instruction is incredibly simple. First, you silently and gently acknowledge where the mind went. Thinking, or planning. Then, without any self-criticism, without any sigh of frustration, you gently and kindly escort your attention back to your anchor spot, back to the physical sensation of the breath. The entire practice can be summarized in 3 words: wandering, realizing, and returning. You will repeat this cycle dozens, perhaps hundreds of times in a single session, and that is the practice. The goal is not to have a perfectly still mind that never wanders. The practice is the gentle returning. Every time you guide your attention back to the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are taming the horse with kindness. You will encounter difficulties. This is also normal. One of the most common is sleepiness. If you feel drowsy, you can check your posture. Are you slumping? Straighten your spine. You can also try bringing your attention to the nostrils, where the sensation is often sharper, or you can even open your eyes for a minute. Another difficulty is physical pain. Your back may ache, or your knees may hurt. Do not torture yourself. You can make small, mindful adjustments to your posture. Move slowly and deliberately, keeping your awareness on the movements. The goal is not to endure agony, but to find a sustainable posture Perhaps the greatest difficulty is the inner critic, the voice that says, "I can't do this. I'm no good at this. My mind is too busy. This is just another thought. It is another weed in the garden." The practice is to see that thought, acknowledge it, the inner critic, and gently return to the breath. There is no such thing as a bad meditation, other than the one you don't do. The simple act of sitting down and committing to the practice for your chosen time is a success. Try to build a daily habit. Start small, but be consistent. It is far better to practice for 5 minutes every day than for an hour once a month. You might try habit stacking, linking your meditation practice to something you already do every day, like practicing right after you brush your teeth in the morning. Be patient. Be kind to yourself. You are cultivating a relationship with your own mind, a relationship of friendship and understanding. This takes time. This foundational practice of mindfulness of breathing is the primary tool for calming the mind, for strengthening our attention, and for developing the non-judgmental awareness that is the heart of wisdom. It is the training of the faculty of attention. But the path of awakening involves the whole person, not just our attention, but also our heart. While mindfulness brings clarity, we also need to actively cultivate warmth, connection, and goodness. Having learned a practice to tame the mind, we now turn to a practice designed to open the heart. This is the beautiful and transformative cultivation of loving kindness. Having learned the foundational practice of mindfulness of breathing, we have discovered a powerful tool for calming the mind and developing clear awareness. We have learned how to sit on the riverbank and watch our thoughts go by without being swept away. This practice cultivates the wing of wisdom. But for the bird of awakening to fly, it needs 2 wings. The other wing is compassion. While mindfulness brings clarity, we must also actively cultivate warmth, connection, and goodness in our hearts. This is the practice of metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. It is the perfect complement to mindfulness, a practice that intentionally opens the heart and dissolves the feelings of anger, judgment, and isolation that cause so much of our suffering. Metta is a Pali word often translated as loving kindness, but it also encompasses goodwill, friendliness, and an unconditional, benevolent warmth. It is crucial to understand that metta is not the conditional, sentimental, or romantic love we so often think of. It is not about simply liking people who are nice to us. Metta is a universal, radiant warmth, like the sun that shines on all without discrimination, and the beautiful flowers and the tangled weeds, on the saints and the sinners. It is a heartfelt, sincere wish for the well-being of any living being. And most importantly, it is not just a fleeting emotion we have to wait for. It is a skill that can be consciously developed, a muscle of the heart that can be strengthened through practice. The practice of metta meditation is a systematic and beautiful method for cultivating this boundless heart. It typically begins with a few minutes of mindfulness of breath to allow the mind to settle. Then, seated in a comfortable and dignified posture, we begin the 5 stages of radiating this loving kindness. The first stage, and for many the most challenging, is directing loving kindness towards ourselves. This is the absolute foundation of the practice. We cannot offer water from an empty well. If we are filled with self-criticism and self-loathing, we have no genuine kindness to offer to others. So, we begin by turning our attention inward. You might bring an image of yourself to mind, or simply get in touch with the feeling of your own being. Then, silently and gently, you repeat a series of phrases, letting the intention behind them sink into your heart. The traditional phrases are, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. You repeat these phrases slowly, like a gentle mantra. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be truly happy and peaceful. May I be strong and healthy in body and mind. May my life be filled with a sense of ease and well-being. Try to offer these phrases to yourself with the same sincerity you would offer to a beloved child or a dear friend. For many of us, this is difficult. The inner critic may object. If so, just notice that and gently return to the phrases. This is a profound act of making friends with yourself. The second stage is to direct loving kindness towards a good friend or benefactor. Bring to mind someone for whom you have easy, uncomplicated feelings of warmth and gratitude. It could be a close friend, a family member, a mentor, or even a beloved pet. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye, and then begin to extend the same wishes for their well-being. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Let your heart naturally fill with the warmth you feel for this person, and radiate that feeling towards them with every phrase. The purpose of this stage is to allow the feeling of metta to flow easily and to strengthen it. The third stage begins to stretch the muscle of the heart. Here, you bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see regularly, but for whom you have no strong feelings, positive or negative. It could be the person who serves you coffee in the morning, a cashier at the grocery store, or someone you pass on your daily commute. We often see such people as mere functions, not as full human beings. In this stage, we consciously recognize their humanity. Just like me, this person wishes to be happy. Just like me, this person wishes to be free from suffering. And so, we offer them the same heartfelt phrases. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This practice starts to break down the artificial barriers we erect between me and them, fostering a sense of shared community. The fourth stage is the most advanced and transformative. Here, we direct loving kindness towards a difficult person. This is someone with whom you have friction, conflict, or resentment. It is wise for a beginner not to choose the most challenging person in their life, but someone who is only mildly irritating. The goal here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force yourself to like them. The goal is to free your own heart from the poison of anger and resentment, which harms you far more than it harms them. Recognizing that their unskillful actions likely arise from their own pain and confusion, you tentatively offer them the phrases, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. If this feels too difficult or inauthentic, it is perfectly fine to return your attention to your friend or to yourself. This stage is a powerful practice of forgiveness and compassion, a deep letting go of the burden of holding a grievance. The fifth and final stage is the expansion of metta to become boundless. Having cultivated this feeling of loving kindness for yourself and for others, you now let it radiate outwards in all directions. You can visualize it expanding from your heart to fill the room you are in, then your entire building, your neighborhood, your city. Extend it to all people in your country and all people on your continent. Extend it to all animals, birds, insects, and fish. Extend it to all beings, seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. Let the phrases become universal. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this stage, the heart transcends all boundaries and limitations, touching upon a state of universal, unconditional love. The healing power of this practice is immense. It is the direct antidote to anger, judgment, and the inner critic. It is impossible to simultaneously hold a feeling of genuine metta and a feeling of hatred in the mind. One replaces the other. It systematically dissolves our feelings of loneliness and separation, reminding us of our deep interconnectedness. Modern science has also begun to validate these ancient claims. Studies at institutions like Stanford, Harvard, and the University of Wisconsin have shown that regular practice of loving kindness and compassion meditation can significantly increase positive emotions, reduce depression and anxiety, alleviate chronic pain, and even strengthen the immune system. It literally changes our brains and bodies for the better. The power of metta is not a weak, passive sentimentality. It is a powerful, transformative force. This is perfectly illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to assassinate him by getting the palace elephant, Nalagiri, intoxicated and setting it loose on the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. The elephant was a terrifying sight, trumpeting and charging, and all the townspeople fled in panic. The Buddha's attendant, Anatta, tried to stand in front of him to protect him, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He stood his ground, and instead of feeling fear or anger, he radiated an immense and powerful field of pure metta towards the charging animal. As the enraged elephant entered this palpable field of loving kindness, a change came over it. Its pace slowed. Its rage subsided. It walked meekly up to the Buddha, knelt down, and allowed the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The Buddha subdued this immense, violent force, not with a greater force, but with the supreme power of a heart completely free from fear and hatred. This story teaches us that loving kindness is our greatest protection. It can tame the wild elephants of anger and fear, both in the outside world and, more importantly, within our own hearts. Having now learned the practice of mindfulness to bring clarity to the mind, and the practice of loving kindness to bring warmth to the heart, we are equipped with the two essential tools for our journey. The next step is to learn how to carry these tools with us, to take them off the meditation cushion and integrate them seamlessly into the fabric of our everyday lives. We have now learned two of the most powerful practices for transforming our inner world: mindfulness of breathing, to cultivate a calm and clear mind, and loving kindness meditation, to cultivate a warm and open heart. We have spent time in the gymnasium of the mind, strengthening the muscles of attention and compassion. But the true purpose of this training is not to become a world-class athlete who only performs in the gym. The purpose is to bring this newfound strength, clarity, and kindness out into the playing field of our everyday lives. The ultimate goal is not to be a great meditator, but to be a more awake, present, and compassionate human being in the midst of family, work, and community. This section is dedicated to bridging the gap between formal meditation and daily life. It is the art of taking the practice off the cushion. The foundational principle is this: there is no moment that is not an opportunity for mindfulness. The same qualities of gentle, non-judgmental attention that we brought to the breath can be brought to any activity. The object of our meditation simply changes. Instead of the breath, the object becomes the sensation of water on our hands as we wash the dishes, the taste of food in our mouth, or the feeling of our feet on the ground as we walk. Life itself becomes our meditation. This practice closes the gap between our spiritual life and our real life, revealing them to be one and the same. Let's explore some simple yet profound ways to weave mindfulness into the fabric of a busy day. We can begin with one of our most common activities: eating. For many of us, meals are eaten mindlessly. We eat while watching a screen, while driving, while working, or while lost in a cascade of anxious thoughts. We barely taste the food. We ignore our body's signals of hunger and fullness, and we miss the simple miracle of nourishment. Mindful eating transforms this unconscious act into a rich sensory meditation. Before you begin to eat, take a moment to pause. Look at your food. Notice its colors, its shapes, its textures. Consider for a moment the journey this food has taken to reach your Pletith sun, the soil, the rain, the work of countless people. This cultivates a natural sense of gratitude. As you take your first bite, do so consciously. Bring the food to your mouth, noticing the movement of your arm. And as you chew, close your eyes for a moment and give your full attention to the experience. Notice the explosion of flavors. Is it sweet, salty, sour, bitter? Notice the texture. Is it soft, crunchy, smooth? Try putting your fork down between bites. Simply sit and experience the sensations in your mouth. Notice the intention to swallow and feel the food traveling down to your stomach. By bringing this simple awareness to a meal, you will not only enjoy your food more, but you will also become more attuned to your body's wisdom, eating when you are hungry and stopping when you are full. Next, consider the simple act of walking. We walk every day, but we are rarely present for it. Our body is walking down a hallway, but our mind is in a meeting that happened an hour ago, or rehearsing a conversation that might happen tomorrow. Mindful walking brings the mind and body back together in the same place at the same time. You can practice this anywhere. As you walk from your car to your office, or from one room of your house to another, bring your attention out of your head and into your feet. Walk at a natural, comfortable pace. Feel the sensation of one foot lifting from the ground. Feel it moving through space. Feel the heel making contact with the floor, then the ball of the foot, then the toes. Feel the transfer of weight as the other foot begins to lift. You don't need to look at your feet. Just feel the sensations. When you notice your mind has wandered away, and it will gently guide your awareness back to the feeling of the next step. This practice is incredibly grounding. It anchors us in the physical reality of the present moment and provides a powerful antidote to the feeling of being scattered and lost in thought. One of the most transformative daily practices is mindful listening. In our conversations, we are often not truly listening. We are hearing the words, but our mind is busy. We are judging what the other person is saying. We are comparing it to our own experiences. And most of all, we are formulating our reply, just waiting for a gap so we can jump in with our own story. Mindful listening is the practice of offering another person the rare and precious gift of our full, undivided attention. When someone is speaking to you, try to just listen. Let go of your own inner commentary. Receive their words. Notice their tone of voice. See the expression on their face. Try to understand the feeling behind their words. When you give someone this quality of attention, they feel seen. They feel heard. They feel respected. This practice can heal relationships, dissolve misunderstandings, and create profound connections with the people in your life. Finally, let us bring mindfulness to our work. The modern workplace often glorifies multitasking, the idea that we can do several things at once. But what neuroscience tells us is that we are not actually multitasking. We are just switching rapidly between tasks, which is inefficient, stressful, and leads to more mistakes. The mindful approach is the practice of single tasking. When you decide to write an email, just write the email. Close the other tabs on your browser. Put your phone out of sight. Give your full attention to composing that message until it is sent. When the task is complete, consciously choose the next task and give it your full attention. When you find your mind being pulled towards a distraction, Notice the pull, and like in your sitting meditation, gently guide your focus back to the task at hand. This way of working reduces the feeling of being overwhelmed, improves the quality of your work, and brings a sense of calm and order to even the most hectic day. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this entire teaching. A proud and powerful general went to visit a Zen master to learn the secrets of enlightenment. "Master," he demanded, "what is the ultimate wisdom of Zen?" The master looked at him calmly and replied, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The general was insulted. What kind of teaching is this? Everybody eats when they are hungry and sleeps when they are tired. There is nothing special about that. The master smiled. "There is a great difference," he said. "When you eat, you are thinking of 1,000 business matters. When you sleep, you are dreaming of 10,000 battles. When I am hungry, I simply eat. When I am tired, I simply sleep." The secret to a mindful life is not to do different things, but to do the same things with a different quality of attention. It is the practice of showing up for your own life, moment by moment by moment. It is about closing the gap between the peace you find on the meditation cushion and the person you are in the world. And the most challenging, and therefore most rewarding, arena for this integrated practice is in our relationships with other people, especially when those relationships become difficult. How we bring our awareness, our patience, and our compassion to moments of conflict is the next great step on our journey. We have learned to bring mindfulness to the solitude of our meditation cushion and to the simple, everyday activities of eating, walking, and working. We now arrive at the most dynamic, complex, and often most challenging arena for our practice: our relationships with other people. It is in our interactions with our parents, our partners, our children, our friends, and our colleagues that our practice is truly tested. These relationships can be our greatest source of joy and connection, but they are also frequently our greatest source of pain, frustration, and suffering. The purpose of this practice is not to fix other people or to win arguments. It is to bring the tools of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom to our side of the equation, so that we can navigate even the most difficult interactions with greater peace, clarity, and less suffering for everyone involved. The practice of mindful relationship always begins with turning the lens of awareness inward. We cannot control what other people say or do, but we have the potential to master our own reactivity. Many of us have deep-seated emotional triggers or buttons that others can push, often unintentionally. A certain tone of voice from a partner, a particular criticism from a parent, a specific behavior from a child, and instantly, we are hijacked by a powerful, automatic wave of anger, defensiveness, or fear. The first step is to become a curious detective of our own inner world. When you find yourself in a difficult conversation and feel that familiar, hot surge of emotion, the practice is to pause, even for a millisecond, and notice. Bring your mindfulness to the body. What are the physical sensations? Is there a tightness in your chest? A clenching in your jaw? A knot in your stomach? Notice the raw feeling tone. Unpleasant feeling is present. Notice the state of mind. Anger is present. By simply noticing these inner events without immediately acting on them, you create a sacred pause. This is the space between stimulus and response that we have spoken of. In that space, you have freedom. You see the habitual, reactive pattern gearing up, but because you see it with clarity, you are no longer its slave. You don't have to blurt out the first defensive thing that comes to mind. You can choose to take a breath, This one simple act meeting your own reactivity with mindful awareness rather than blind obedience is the foundation of transforming your relationships. You stop adding your own fuel to the fire. Once we have created some space internally, we can then change how we engage externally. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught two profound skills for this: deep listening and loving speech. Deep listening, or compassionate listening, is a practice where your only intention is to help the other person suffer less. You listen with your whole being, without interrupting, without correcting, and without formulating your own rebuttal. You listen not just to the words being said, but for the suffering that lies behind them. You give the other person the incredible gift of feeling truly heard and understood. Often, this act alone is enough to de-escalate a conflict, as the other person feels they no longer have to fight to be seen. Loving speech is the active application of right speech in a difficult moment. It means speaking our own truth, but doing so with gentleness and respect. It often involves using I statements instead of accusatory you statements. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," which immediately puts the other person on the defensive, we might say, "When I share something important and I see you looking at your phone, I feel hurt and unimportant." This communicates our own suffering without attacking the other person's character. It is a way of being both honest and kind, of speaking from a place of vulnerability rather than aggression. These skills are powerful, but the deepest transformation comes from a fundamental shift in perspective. This is the cultivation of karuna, or compassion, the sincere wish for another being to be free from their suffering. The core insight that fuels this compassion is the understanding that hurtful, unskillful, and angry behavior is almost always a cry of pain. People who are genuinely happy, secure, and at peace do not have the need to lash out, to belittle, or to control others. When someone is speaking to us with anger, when they are being critical or unkind, the practice is to listen behind the words for the suffering that is driving them. Are they feeling afraid? Are they feeling unseen? Are they replaying a wound from their own past? When we can see the other person not as an adversary, but as a suffering human being, our own heart naturally begins to soften. This does not mean we must accept abusive behavior or that we don't need to set clear boundaries. We can and should protect ourselves. But we can set those boundaries from a place of calm, compassionate clarity, rather than from a place of reactive anger. We can say, "I am not willing to continue this conversation while you are yelling at me," from a place of firm self-respect, not from a desire to punish. This changes the entire energy of the interaction. There is a beautiful story that illustrates this principle perfectly. A man was meditating in his small boat on a quiet, misty lake. He had his eyes closed and was deep in a state of peace. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashed into his, jarring him from his meditation. He was instantly filled with rage. Who was this careless, inconsiderate person who had ruined his peace? He opened his eyes, ready to scream at the fool who had hit him. But when he looked, he saw that the other boat was empty. It had simply come untied from its moorings, and the current had drifted it into him. In that instant, all his anger vanished. There was no one to be angry at. It was just an empty boat. The story concludes with a powerful reflection. Most of the people who crash into our lives are just like that empty boat. They are not acting with a clear, malicious intention to harm us. They themselves are adrift, pushed about by the invisible currents of their own fear, their own insecurity, their own pain, and their own confusion. They are empty of a malicious self who is trying to hurt you. They are full of their own suffering. When we can truly see this, when we can see the empty boat in the person who is causing us pain, our anger often dissolves. It is replaced by a sense of understanding and perhaps even compassion. We stop taking it so personally. We are then free to deal with the situation, the dent in our boat, with skill and wisdom, rather than with blind, reactive rage. This is the high practice of relationship. It is to meet the world's sharp edges with a soft and open heart. It is to see the suffering behind the anger. It is to manage our own reactivity before we try to manage anyone else's. It takes all the wisdom, all the ethical grounding, and all the mental discipline we have cultivated on the path, and applies it to the place where it matters most, our connection to one another. By doing so, we not only reduce our own suffering, but we become a source of peace and healing for the people in our lives. Having applied our practice to our inner world, to our daily activities, and to the complexities of our relationships, a final question arises. What is the ultimate aim of all this? Is it simply to keep applying these different techniques and managing our experiences forever? Or is there a deeper integration, a point where the practice and the practitioner become one? This leads us to the final part of our journey through the body of these teachings, an exploration of moving beyond technique into a fully embodied way of being, to truly live the Dharma. We have now traveled a great distance together. We began in the noisy, restless heart of the modern world, feeling the weight of its anxiety and disconnection. From there, we embarked upon a journey, an ancient path that promised a way through the wilderness. We faced the first noble truth, looking directly at the nature of our own suffering. We investigated its cause in the second, uncovering the roots of craving and clinging. We were given a profound hope in the third truth, the promise that an end to suffering is possible. And we have now walked, step by step, through the entirety of the fourth noble truth, the comprehensive, life-altering map of the Noble Eightfold Path. We have explored how to cultivate wisdom, how to live with ethical integrity, and how to train the mind in stillness and clarity. We have learned the practical arts of meditation, bringing mindfulness to the breath and loving kindness to the heart. We have seen how to weave these practices into our daily activities and into the fabric of our most intimate relationships. And so we arrive at the culmination of this journey. After all this learning, all this practice, all this effort, a final and essential question remains. What is the ultimate goal? Is it to become a master of techniques, a person who is very good at doing mindfulness or performing loving kindness? Is the aim to keep applying these tools forever, constantly managing our experience like a diligent technician? The final stage of this path points to a transformation that is far more profound. It is the shift from doing a practice to being the practice. It is the moment when the path disappears because it has become indistinguishable from the person walking it. This is the integration of all that we have learned. This is the art of truly living the Dharma. In the beginning, our practice feels like a distinct and separate activity. We have our meditation time on the cushion, and then we have the rest of our life. We try to remember to be mindful while eating. We make a special effort to speak kindly. It can feel like we are adding a new set of tasks to an already busy life. This is a natural and necessary stage. We are like a musician learning scales, consciously, and sometimes clumsily practicing the fundamentals. But if the musician persists, a magical shift occurs. They no longer have to think about the scales. Their fingers just know where to go. The music begins to flow through them. They are no longer doing music. They have become the music. So it is with this path. Through consistent, gentle practice, the qualities we cultivate cease to be conscious efforts. and begin to become our natural way of being. Mindfulness is no longer something we have to remember to turn on. It becomes the default setting of our awareness. We find ourselves present for the small moments of life, not because we are trying, but because the mind has grown quiet and naturally rests in the here and now. Compassion is no longer a set of phrases we repeat. It becomes the spontaneous, unhesitating response of our heart to the sight of suffering. Wisdom is not a doctrine we recall. It is the very lens through which we see the world, recognizing the impermanence and interconnectedness in all things. The separation between our practice and our life dissolves. Every moment becomes the practice, and the practice is simply living our life fully awake. There is a classic Zen story that illuminates this beautiful transformation. A young, zealous student asks his old master, "Master, tell me, what was your life like before you attained enlightenment?" The master reflects for a moment and replies, "Before I was enlightened, I was often miserable. I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, eager for the secret, then asks, "And now, master, what is your life like after enlightenment?" The master smiles gently and says, "Now, I am often happy. I chop wood and I carry water." The external circumstances of life may not change dramatically. We still chop wood. We still carry water. We still have jobs to do, families to care for, bills to pay. The world continues to present its challenges, but the inner quality of our being as we engage with these activities is completely transformed. Before, we chopped wood, while our minds were lost in anxious planning for the future or regretful rehashing of the past. Now, we just chop wood. The act itself is complete. The sound of the axe, the feeling of the muscles, the smell of the pine, all of it is met with a simple, undivided presence. When we carry water, we just carry water, feeling the weight of the buckets and the rhythm of our steps. Life is no longer a series of problems to be solved or a means to get to some future happiness. Life itself, in all its ordinary, mundane glory, becomes the destination. This leads to the final, most subtle letting go. Throughout our journey on the path, there is often a quiet, persistent striving. We are striving to get somewhere, to a state of more peace, to a moment of insight, to the grand goal of enlightenment. This desire can be skillful and necessary. It is what motivates us to practice. But eventually, even this desire, even the attachment to the goal itself, must be seen for what it is, another form of subtle clinging. The identity of being a good meditator or a spiritual person can become just another mask for the ego. The anxiety of, "Am I doing it right?" or "When will I finally get there?" is just another form of mental restlessness. The final stage of the practice involves the gentle release of even this spiritual ambition. It is the courage to trust the path completely, to rest in the simple awareness of this moment, without needing it to be anything other than what it is. And in that final act of letting go, we discover the most beautiful paradox of the path. All along, we thought peace was a destination at the end of a long and difficult road. We believed that if we just practiced hard enough, if we purified our minds enough, then one day, in the future, we would finally arrive at a state of unshakable peace. But the ultimate realization is that peace was never at the end of the road. Peace is the road. Every breath taken with full awareness is a moment of peace. Every time we gently guide our wandering mind back from distraction, that is an act of peace. Every time we choose a kind word over a harsh one, we are manifesting peace. Every moment of non-judgmental acceptance of our own experience is the very peace we were seeking. Liberation is not a grand, dramatic event that awaits us in the future. Liberation is available, right now, in this very moment. The freedom we were seeking at the destination was hidden within every single step of the journey. The entire path was simply a way to train ourselves to see what was already here. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about finally coming home to who we have always been beneath the noise and confusion. Aware, present, and fundamentally okay. It is the end of the search and the beginning of simply and beautifully being. We began this journey together in a place that may have felt deeply familiar, a world of noise and hurry, of pressure and distraction. We began with the quiet ache of a life lived on autopilot, a sense of being perpetually overwhelmed, of seeking a peace that always seemed just out of reach. From that starting point, we have traveled an immense distance. We have walked an ancient path, one that first asked us to be brave enough to look directly at our own dissatisfaction, to understand it not as a personal failing, but as a universal truth of the human condition. We followed the thread of that truth to its source, discovering that the root of our struggle was not in the world outside, but within our own minds, in our habitual, restless grasping for what is pleasant, and our fearful pushing away of what is painful. We learned to see the world as it is, a ceaseless, flowing river of impermanence, and to see ourselves not as fixed, solid entities, but as fluid, selfless processes within that river. And then, with this clear-eyed diagnosis, we were given a great gift, a map, a guide to healing. We walked, step by step, through the Noble Eightfold Path, learning to cultivate a life of wisdom, of deep ethical integrity, and of profound mental discipline. We learned to tame the mind and to open the heart. If there is one essential truth to carry with you from this entire journey, let it be this: the peace you are seeking is not somewhere else. It is not in a future accomplishment, a different location, or a better set of circumstances. It has been, and always will be, an innate capacity of your own mind. The frantic, lifelong search for happiness in things that are by their very nature impermanent is the very activity that perpetuates our discontent. The path shown to us by the Buddha is not about becoming someone different. It is not about escaping your life. It is about fundamentally transforming your relationship to your life. It is about learning to be present with your own thoughts without being their prisoner. It is about learning to feel your own emotions without being swept away by their storms. It is about learning to inhabit your own body in this very moment and realizing that this is home. The goal is not to eliminate all of life's difficulties, but to cultivate an inner peace so deep and so stable that it remains unshaken even when the storms of the world rage around you. And so, we end where we began, but with a new understanding. We are still in this modern world, with all of its challenges and all of its beauty, but we are no longer lost within it. We have a compass, we have a path, and we have the means to begin the journey. You do not need anything more than what you already possess in this exact moment. You do not need a special temple or a distant guru. You have your breath, a faithful anchor to the present that is with you until your very last moment. You have your mind, a vast and fertile garden that you can now choose to cultivate with kindness and wisdom. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But this journey, the journey home to yourself, begins with something even simpler. It begins with a single, conscious breath, right here, right now. This is your starting point. This is your sanctuary. This is your path to peace.